Wait,
This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, we are here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada on July 19th, 2021. And we have a wonderful guest today. I am a co-producer on 13 Fanboy, and I am wearing the shirt.
Nice.
Which I am happy to display here. And I got the little tote bag, which I was happy to show off when I went to Horrorama last year.
Hell yeah. I put your name in the credits twice.
Awesome. Folks, I have... You're editor or executive producer?
I'm just the editor.
Okay, I get all these mixed up because I had Joel Paul Rising on earlier in the year. So.
Oh yeah.
Yep, folks, I have the editor of 13 Fanboy, the guy that's going to have the movie play for 2 hours with just my picture in the film on the screen. Please go see it.
Yeah, right.
But folks, I give you the editor of 13 Fanboy, the wonderful Riley C. Morris. How do you do, Riley?
I do fairly well when I have enough time to prepare. That's not true. I do fairly well when I don't. Actually, probably better with less time to prepare. I'm an improviser at heart.
You know what? We're good though. We're good. I know you were binge watching Troy Elke videos before you come on here. I get it.
You know, I'll be honest, I haven't seen enough Troy. I mean, he's fast. He puts them out. That's more than I can do or can say.
You know, I know his voice is going to be in 13 Fanboy, but I'm like, he's got a face that needs to be seen.
He's got a good radio voice though too.
Yeah.
We had him do a couple different line reads for some different voices in the film, and we ended up putting him in on he's on a phone, and it's great. It's a good little role where I was like, man, that guy needs to just do all the voices in this thing.
Yep.
Yeah, or like narrate the next trailer or something. In a world where Troy Elke watches a movie.
Well, you're my 17th guest from the film. I've interviewed more people from 13 Fanboy than anything, and this is also the first film I've ever gotten involved with, you know.
That's cool.
Yep. I've had Debbie Sue Voorhees on the show here 4 times, and I would have had her on last year, but I don't know, something tried to shit all over everybody's year in 2020, so I couldn't do that. So I'll have Debbie Sue on this fall sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an interesting year. Man, she's so popular. I came into this project knowing, very little about the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'll just fast forward like a year and a half. And she had a couple jobs done at her house, like a refrigerator had to be replaced, and then like a heating unit in the house had to be replaced, and something else had to be fixed. And every time there were like crew guys or work guys coming over to the house, one of them inevitably would be an epic fan of Friday the 13th, particularly part 5, and would recognize her and recognize all the Friday the 13th memorabilia around the house. And then we would bring them into the edit bay and let them look at whatever we were working on. Like, hey, check out this scene. What do you think of this? Or, hey, check out this trailer. How do you feel about it? And that was a pretty neat little experience. She's got some crazy celebrity prowess to her that not a lot of people in Ruidoso know about, but random people will just catch into it, and it's funny. It's so funny to observe.
I've interviewed a lot of people from the franchise. In fact, I've even got that big box set sitting over there, you know. Do you have a favorite from the franchise?
I like the first one. I think that one's real clean and simple. I actually saw that for the first time on a date when I lived in Hollywood at the Vista Theater on Friday the 13th in a packed house.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like watching the first hour with this girl, and we were enjoying ourselves, but obviously not paying a lot of attention. And nobody had died yet. And I was just like, wow, all these, there's 300 people in this room. They got to have gotten something wrong. And we were just getting ready to leave when I think an arrow gets like shoved through somebody's neck in the first one, and we both were like had our asses half out of the seats, and we realized, oh well, we're just gonna stay for the rest of this now that the blood's here. Let's do that. That was a lot of fun. I watched the first two and a little bit of part three, but while I was working on this movie, I kind of took a distant approach towards it because I was editing a different movie, not Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of, the guy that wrote the Willy Wonka reboot with Johnny Depp.
I don't know who he is, but I know what film you're talking about.
Right. So the guy that wrote that movie somehow it happened in his whole life, he'd never seen the Gene Wilder version of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Wonderful film. In fact, I've interviewed Julie Dawn Cole from that movie.
Which one is she?
She is
Veruca Salt?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
She was awesome.
That's a great movie.
Yep.
Unrelated, I spent an afternoon with Gene Wilder once on I had a job, a performing job in Stratford, Connecticut, and he happened to be down the street, and I got to hang out with that dude, and he was so incredible. And yeah, so the guy that wrote the reboot was under instruction from Tim Burton not to watch the Gene Wilder version.
Why?
It's because Tim Burton didn't want his Charlie and the Chocolate Factory to have any sort of connection or thread. And he didn't want the writer to be sort of swayed or pushed to make any references to the original. Like he wanted this is our own project. It has nothing to do with that thing. And so I kind of took that approach with editing 13 Fanboy. I had made it so far in my life without ever seeing really any of the Friday the 13th movies. Mm-hmm. And so while I was cutting it, my concern would be that if I watched and went through all those, that I would be so focused on trying to make and cut a Friday the 13th movie.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Where I've cut a bunch of other horror films and I've studied other horror films. Yeah, I felt like I should be careful with what I ingest while I'm working on this, because I don't want to make a copy of something. So instead, I watched some Italian giallo horror films.
Oh, love those.
I went, instead of going to what this movie is sort of a commentary on, I went further into the cut of horror and watched some of the greats, like The Bird with the Crystal Plumage blew me away. And when I watched that movie, I realized holy shit, we are making a giallo movie. Vincent DeSante is actually the one that sort of turned me on to it.
I love Dario Argento. I've interviewed
that's cool.
A few people from Suspiria.
Suspiria was amazing. I'm at my dad's house and we were looking at some of the movies that he's got, and he has the remake of Suspiria.
I actually didn't mind the remake. I was surprised.
I haven't watched it yet. But he was like, no, I haven't seen it yet either. And I was like, okay, well, do yourself a favor, watch the original first, because the original Giallo Suspiria, it was. I'll put it up there with. It was just as intense viewing as my first viewing of Rear Window, where I was
Rear Window. It's my favorite Hitchcock film.
I was standing on the couch, yelling at the tiny TV screen I had when I watched Rear Window, and I did the same thing with Suspiria, where I was just like, what the fuck is going on? When she starts going down that hallway and that music kicks in. Oh my God.
I
Oh,
did
that's
a
Van.
tribute to Hitchcock. I had his granddaughter on here back in 2016.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Did you see Deep Red?
Profondo Russo? I did. It's a little long. Um, but
Deep
oops.
Red, I think, is Argento's best film, I think.
What did he do? I read that his original script took 5 hours to read for that movie.
Oh,
And
wow.
he had to trim it down, and he had family members read it, and everyone's complaint was like, yeah, it's great, it's just way too long, buddy. um
I had Daria Nicolodi on
Very cool.
last year, February, and she passed away towards the end of the year. I was very fortunate to get her when I did. But
Yeah, so I went down those giallo routes and actually applied some similar cutting styles to 13 Fanboy. There's a scene. There's a scene where the fanboy like sneaks into somebody's house, and there's some specific cutting that I did to help create tension that I definitely pulled directly from The Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
oh, nice.
When that guy is walking up the stairs towards the end of the movie. I, I was watching that movie and I was like, oh, that's what I'm missing from this other scene in the film. Yeah, that was pretty neat. Pretty neat.
I would love to watch 13 Fanboy and think more Giallo than slasher.
That's definitely the vibe. I'll be honest with you, because this movie, 13 Fanboy, is definitely not a slasher. It has slasher elements. It definitely placates to that. Um, and I don't mean placate in an insulting way, but it just, that's part of the trope of this franchise, both in its original form from Deb and also as a commentary to what the movie is sort of coming from and based from. Because although the main character, the villain is, is a copycat killer,
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely way more a study on the fans themselves and on how that can kind of go dark side, and also on the experience of the final girls and survivors of the franchise, not just acting in the film, but living on past acting in the film. Seeing how people like Deborah continue on and live their lives after being in this process. And Tracy Savage, Judy Aronson, Kane, CJ, Corey, of course, except Corey does not play. He's one of the only alums in the film who does not play himself,
Mm-hmm.
which was interesting. Oh man, Corey was so cool. I was 100% sure this movie, I didn't think it was real until Corey showed up on day one. And then there he was. And I was like, wow, we're making a movie. But yeah, Corey's casting in this movie is spot on. He plays a creepy, pervy, possessive Hollywood producer. It's great. I remember like right before shooting, he's getting ready to go on, and then he turns around and he's like, I need to be sweaty. I need to be sweaty. Spritzer! Where's the spritzer go? Spritzer! And he like sprayed water all over his face to get as sweaty as possible. That guy was a pro.
Awesome. Awesome. I guess all those times where Ted White had to deal with them on the final chapter paid off. But no, I am looking forward to 13 Fanboy. Now, the plan was for an August 13th release. Is that still happening?
The original plan was a Friday 13th release in 2020.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. We tried to rush to get it out the door. And if we had, it would have been an absolute nightmare. And I'm so glad it got pushed back. We were still cleaning up the edit and not 100% on our runtime. And, we had a struggle. We had a great script, and then we had,
Here's my 13 fanboy.
oh, nice, little gato. ¿Dónde está el gato?
Yeah.
Let's see. We had, okay, good.
Anyway,
We had,
yeah.
wait, what was the question? We had the,
About the release for the 13th of
yeah. So I think the next date was August, Friday the 13th. They only recently just picked up distribution, and I recently cut the final trailer for the movie that's yet to go out. That trailer should be out pretty soon. I'm really proud of that trailer. It's going off to get sound mixing done and to get rescored by the composer. So I'm hoping it'll drop in the next couple of weeks or so. Yeah, so now I think they're looking more at like an October release of this year. At least that way it can get around Halloween era, But I think we missed out on a Friday the 13th release date. But that's above my pay grade. I'm on the sidelines, and my job's done now as an editor. I appreciate your patience on how long it took to get me on this. I kept thinking we were done with the movie, and then we had a couple other things to work out in kinks, a couple other effects to replace in, and Deb and I just kept going back and forth on minor details over the past few months. And just 2 days ago, I finished making the closing credits of the film. And so now that's done and out the door. And I've been on this movie for about 2.5 years.
I first heard of it. I've interviewed Debbie Sue on the show 4 times. And I think it was on the 3rd interview with her that she had first pitched it. And the moment she mentioned Tracy Savage was in it, I knew I was in.
Tracy's great. Wow. I mean, yeah. I know she's a reporter and works in the journalism category. She's actually a teacher in that respect now. She's great. She was she was concerned that she wouldn't still have the on-screen presence, but it was like watching her remember how to ride a bike. She was great. Had the heavy breathing and the panic and it was great. She was a pro, and a lot of fun to work with. She kept it fun. We only had her for 2 days.
I had her on the show here twice, both on Boxing Day of all days. And I'm planning to have her back. Actually, I would have had her on last year, but I didn't have my Zoom set up in time. And she said 2021 is probably a bit better anyway. I think 2020 was pretty depressing. So
2020 was rough, man. I'll be honest, but I'm glad I had this movie with me for COVID. Let's see. I worked in Los Angeles for about 4 years before I worked on this movie. I went out there. I made a short film in Texas, where I'm from, and then that got into 2 festivals. One in Georgia, the state, not the country, Macon, Georgia. And I met a producer there who ended up getting me some work in Los Angeles, and that's how I moved out there. And the second festival took us to Ireland, and me and my buddies on the film went to Ireland, and that got us some incredible connections. I'm going to meet a friend I met from there pretty soon. And, but I moved to LA and worked with this guy. The first thing I did was come into LA, eat lunch, and then immediately start working on Burying the X, starring Anton Yelchin, and
Okay.
Ashley Greene and Alexandria Daddario, directed by Joe Dante.
Oh, love Alexandria Daddario.
She's cool. Unfortunately, I didn't work on set. I was all post production and doing the BTS editing, all the behind the scenes featurette stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was really neat. Obviously, tough to lose Anton. Um,
Yeah.
I got to see a side of him just from behind the scenes stuff. But
Did you
so
see
I,
what Alexandra Daddario has been doing during COVID?
what was she doing during COVID?
She's got a YouTube channel, and she and one of her friends that she hangs out with were just doing random weird stuff. They would have their mask on, but they went out, I think one day went snorkeling and went
Yeah,
out and did this and it was just funny seeing this gorgeous woman.
she's a peculiar one. She is
Yeah, what
gorgeous, but
I
she keeps
like
it weird, and I appreciate that.
I like that about her, you know,
I
because the
like a
first
girl that
time
keeps it
I'd
weird.
seen her was in Hall Pass. That was the first time I'd seen her. And I remember the scene where she's telling not Woody Harrelson, Owen Wilson, because she
That's
was a
true.
baby.
That's True Detective. That was the first thing I saw her in. Holy
Well, she
smoke!
was a babysitter for Owen Wilson's children in
Hall Pass.
Hall Pass, and she made this comment, and I saw this in the theater where she says, "Your kids are like little monkeys. They just want to climb all over me." And there, every guy, like there was guys in the theater that were reacting to
Yeah, I'd like to. Never mind. Anyways, move on. Move on. Yeah, so I worked on that Burying the X movie, and then I cut on a little indie horror film called Navy SEALs versus Zombies. That was
Oh, nice.
a lot of interesting fun. And then another movie called The Singularity, starring John Cusack.
Ah,
That
high
was a really
fidelity.
I love John Cusack, High Fidelity specifically.
Yeah.
I've been listening to my guts for 60 for what does he say? For 16 years or 46 years. You know what I've learned? My guts have shit for brains.
Yep.
Um,
Did
but
you
yeah,
ever see Pro Wrestlers versus Zombies? That was interesting.
no, but that sounds really entertaining.
I had
Uh,
the director on the show,
oh
Cody
man.
Knox, and these wrestlers get sent to wrestle at this prison where there's actually a zombie invasion.
Yes.
So it's these zombies in there, and the wrestlers they had were Roddy Piper, Shane Douglas, Matt Hardy, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Um, oh, Kurt Angle was in there, did the ankle lock on a zombie and ripped its foot off. It
Man,
was just
you were talking to the wrong guy about wrestling, but the but I appreciate it. The
mm-hmm,
you know what's funny is the a buddy of mine, his name is Barry Stiglitz. He's a horror writer. He's been
mm-hmm,
trying to convince me to get into the Friday the 13th franchise ever since the day we met.
mm-hmm,
And eventually he moved out to LA while I was out there. And he worked with my producing partner in LA on writing and restructuring projects. That was my big job out there. It was just like, hey, here's a snake bitten project. What can you do to recut this to make it kind of sing a little bit more? And so he helped with projects like that and helped me edit on a lot of different personal things. And then when I moved to Rio Doso, I was looking for a little peace and quiet away from the city. And I moved in with a buddy of mine. And then 6 months in, I met a lady in town named Jana Lynch, who was like the local artist in Rio Doso. And she introduced me to Deb because she's making a movie with Corey Feldman. And okay, yeah, let me at least just see what's going on there. And then, I found out it's this whole Friday the 13th thing. And I called my buddy Barry up and I was like, yeah, it looks like I'm going to make a movie with Deborah Voorhees of Friday the 13th Part 5. And it's going to star CJ, Kane. I gave him the whole list of everybody involved. And my buddy Barry was just shitting himself with confusion. Like, how did this guy who hasn't seen any of the Friday the 13th movies get to be on this project? And now you're over here talking about wrestling, and that's his second language. So I
I
just
don't
need.
watch wrestling anymore. I used to watch it. Now it's just too stupid. But
It's,
watching Roddy Piper hit a zombie in the head with a coconut and bust it was pretty
it,
funny.
it sounds entertaining. My next question is, how many coconuts are in a prison? Is that a common
I don't
thing?
know, but the reason that happened is the big famed Roddy Piper had a talk show segment in wrestling called Piper's Pit. And one of the big angles in 1984 was he busted a coconut over Jimmy Superfly Snuka's head.
Oh, so they had to include that in the.
Of course, of
I, I,
course.
I like the thinking of the creative writing process for the
Hmm.
producers and directors on when they realize they get Roddy Piper. Like, okay, great. Now we got to figure out how to bring a coconut into this prison.
Yeah.
I mean, how
So,
many? Let's be honest. How many prisoners are sneaking coconuts up their culos into a prison? I got the good stuff, man. I got the good stuff.
got the
You
good
want a
stuff.
pack of smokes? This coconut's all yours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, the next
So,
his prison inmate is asking for a pineapple next time.
yeah, but that was one of the big angles at that time. I can't stand wrestling now, but I used to like back in the 70s and the 80s, that was where it's predetermined, but back then they made it they allowed you to buy into it. Today it's just a free for all joke, you know.
Mm,
So
I don't I don't mind it.
yeah.
Uh, so let's see. I just came in and worked on this COVID, right? COVID hit. Let's see. We shot 13 Fanboy for a month in July of 2019.
Hmm.
And that's about when I came on the project. And then after that movie wrapped, I adopted the dog that I have now. And then that dog was with us from puppy to basically 2 years old by the time the movie was wrapped. Um, and it's funny because now Deb has a new puppy, and my dog can't stand that puppy because her energy level is through the roof. But when I first brought my puppy onto the scene, she was the crazy one, and all of Deb's dogs couldn't stand my dog. So now it's the polars have switched. Um, but that was so we worked on that, took a few months off. Christmas came and went, and then January of 2020, we shot the rest of the movie for like a month and a half.
You guys were fortunate because
That
Debbie
timing worked
got
out
that
real well.
all shot before the lockdown. She was very
Mhm.
fortunate because the guys from Hearts of Darkness weren't quite so lucky on that.
Yeah, we wrapped end of January, and then I think Deb and Deb went to LA. I went to LA as well, but we went to LA for different reasons. Went to LA. Deb went and got 1 week's worth of pickup shots in Los Angeles with Haley, and Vince was out there and helped us pick up some shots too. He flew a drone around for some stuff, um, and brought out a few other crew guys to LA. And then COVID dropped like 2 or 3 weeks later. And Deb and I had worked 2 or 3 weeks together editing and getting, basic structure and things divvied up. And then COVID dropped, and we basically decided to play it very safe for the first few months because, neither of us knew how far this thing was going to go or if it was going to reach Ruidoso and what that would look like. Ruidoso is a different town because there's only one hospital servicing the entire county, and that hospital only has 30 beds. And so the likelihood of us getting, swamped by COVID was less because we weren't a big city.
Hmm.
But if we were, the likelihood of us running out of beds and it becoming worse was much higher. And so we played it safe and divvied up the movie half and half. I took all of the torture, death, violent, bloody gore scenes,
Hmm.
and Deb took all of the talkie and romance and expositional scenes. And she was cutting hers during the day, and I was cutting all my death and violence and gore shit at night, because that's where I find the mood, especially when I'm cutting stuff like that. So I remember there were a couple of times I was editing. At the time, I was living with a roommate, and I remember, I think it was, I was cutting a Tracy Savage scene, and Tracy was screaming, "Help, help, help," in a scene. And my roommate came in the room and thought that somebody was screaming for help outside my window. But it was actually just Tracy on the computer. And so he was like, wow, I thought that was real. And I was like, yes, exactly. Perfecto. That was cool. That was tough though, because I did a lot of late night edits with headphones on, really creepy shit, and some violent stuff that I like, basically injected into my brain and was constantly swirling through my head. While at the same time, there's hospitals getting overrun and people dying of this pandemic thing. It was a real tough time to be cutting, that kind of stuff. As an editor, I work I rely pretty heavily on my empathic abilities to just kind of like sit and feel. Like I need to do that with every single scene of like, okay, let me watch this. Do I feel anything? And that was real tough to sort of like compartmentalize what I've got going on here on my desk versus what's happening outside in the rest of the world. And we pretty much operated like that for about 2 months. And I would finish cutting a scene, getting it to a certain point, and then I would email that project file to Deb, and she would send me her stuff. And we would just go back and forth for the first few months. And then after that, we started meeting in person. We probably spent about the first 6 to 8 months in person, editing with masks on in the same room, just as a precaution. That was a wild time.
Well, I already know. I already know that the dogs are the 13 fanboys. I know that.
Like I said, there were 9 at the house when we were cutting. It was an absolute circus. And Deb has 2 little dogs, which are very happy to see everybody, but very loud. And then 2 older dogs that stay outside that weren't crazy about my puppy. And then my puppy is a blue heeler pit bull breed mix that needs a lot of attention. So we had to take a lot of fetch breaks, and it was a big chaos jungle of puppy wrangling. Plus my dog has terrible gas sometimes. And so Deb and I would be sitting there editing like really intense scenes, looking at, is this death believable? Am I scared for this character right now? Is this woo? They got to kick my dog out of the room. She suddenly gasses us out. It was terrible. That was the real horror of the movie.
Well, I got involved in this movie quite early. I've had Tracy Savage on here a couple times, and I had joked with her. I said, it is true when they say women can make guys spend money. Because I said to her, I said, you know how much money I spent on this movie because of you? I pointed at her,
I was blown away by, like I said, I'm very new to this franchise family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was there on day 1. We had Corey Feldman,
Mm-hmm.
and we knocked him out in a day, which was a very cool process. Day 2 and 3, we had Tracy Savage.
Mm-hmm.
And Shane Erickson, William Shane Erickson, as he's listed in the credits. He's got a line in the film, and he's a super fan autograph collector, and he got involved early on as well. And I remember him kind of being there on set. I didn't really know a lot of the people on set. I knew Deb, I knew her husband, and there were a few locals in town, but I was still pretty new to the area, so I didn't really even know the locals. I just knew all these random people that showed up and were working on this movie. I was shooting behind the scenes footage those first few days. And then Tracy showed up and was prepping to do her scene. And then Judy Aronson showed up. And Judy was hanging out on set watching Tracy work. And, I wasn't familiar with either of these two from the franchise. I just knew that they were acting in the thing, and I'm just here to observe. Um, my real work didn't begin until all the footage was in the can. Um, and then Shane showed up about halfway through that day or at the beginning or something. And Tracy saw him and was super excited to see him. And then Judy did the exact same thing. And I was blown away that these two, alumni actors from the franchise were, spastically excited to see this fan that they'd recognized from other conventions. And that this fan was not only acting in the movie, but was also a supporter and a producing in some aspect and helping to make this movie get made, which is, I came from Hollywood where there's like, don't take this the wrong way, like real Hollywood money getting into some of this stuff. The first one I worked on definitely was an Indiegogo produced film, and that was a really neat process to sort of help them. I had to help wrangle all the reward packages and make sure everybody got their stuff at the end of the whole process. But to see the Indiegogo support and to see all these supporters come in and actually help volunteer their time to see this movie get made, and then to be recognized by various stars from the franchise on set, that's when I was really just blown away by the grace of the fans and the stars of these films, and seeing this sort of reciprocal love happening. And that was like, I was just blown away by sort of the family nature of how special this whole world is to a lot of people. And so that was, day two of the project, when I realized like, wow, we've got something very unique and special here. And I'm very pleased to have been a part of it.
I'm thrilled to be part of this as well. And I remember I got involved with it without mentioning anybody. And when my younger brother, who's my tech guy, found out, he said, had he known beforehand, he might have tried to talk me out of it, but because of the money. And he said, now that I see what this is, he says, I'm glad you did it.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I stayed in this guy's house. Like I roomed at this guy. I rented. That's what normal people say. I rented a house in Ruidoso for a few months before I left.
Mhm.
And the owner of the house, he was telling me, I told him about this movie, and then he talked to his brother-in-law, and I guess his brother-in-law has been a big fan of this film. And so for this guy to tell his brother-in-law, he's like, yeah, I've got the editor of 13 Fanboy staying at my house. His brother-in-law like flipped his shit, getting excited about it. Um, yeah, pretty wild stuff, man. Pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, and from me, it went from co-producer to I don't even know what perks I'm getting from this movie. Like I don't remember. Um, um, but I
The
next
perk of
was
seeing it get made
yeah.
and helping pay my bills and Deb's bills during COVID, because that movie kept us. I was locked in. As soon as COVID started, that was my main bread and butter. So I'm very appreciative of all the supporters of this film, because definitely would not have been made without any of them. I mean, it's like we have a built-in fan base and audience already, packed in the theater, just like sitting there eating the popcorn, waiting for the movie. And I've never had that kind of like that drive and feeling when working on a movie before, of like, wow, there's a fuck ton of people that I've never met before who can't wait to see this come out. And here I am, a non-Friday the 13th fan, just like, let me edit this thing and hope people like it. It's
I
pretty
got
neat.
the next perk I got was to get my credit at the beginning of the movie, and I did that kind of as I was very disappointed at the film scene here in New Brunswick.
Mm.
We got a film festival here that started out so strong in 2000, We used to have, some people from the Trailer Park Boys would be there, or Joe Medjuck, who was the producer of Ghostbusters and whatnot, or Tara Spencer Nairn from Corner Gas. Now it's got reduced to paying a VIP to go to this thing to meet people I could meet at the local coffee shop or the mall for free. And it's
Mhm.
like, what happened to our film festival? So I pitched 13 Fanboy at the film institution here, and I'd said, could we? I had just given the Friday the 13th franchise, along with this and with Hearts of Darkness, a New Brunswick connection. And they asked if I was starring, and I'm like, no, you don't want to see that. You're lucky to see my picture in it. And they turned it down. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not seeing anything out of the local film festival that I'm impressed with. In fact,
It's
I
a
had
peculiar.
choice in 2017 to go to the local film festival or
Mhm.
accept Lisa Langlois' offer to assist her at Horrorama in Toronto the same weekend. Guess which one I took?
I'm gonna go with Lisa Lang.
Yeah, Lisa Langlois, because I love Class of 1984.
This is like this movie is it's a hard pitch to make for people who are not fans. It's interesting. That's been my experience when I tell people about the movie that I've been working on for 2 years. Most people are like, "Oh, I don't like slashers," and I let them know, like, "Okay, well, this is not a slasher. It's a commentary on slashers, but it's the movie itself is not a slasher. It's a drama suspense thriller with notes of giallo, which also does not help the pitch either. At that
Well,
point,
you
people
know
start
what?
walking away from
At
me.
our
Well,
theater right now, we got movies playing there that, like, I go once a week to the movie theater. I just saw Escape Room 2 last night because it was the only thing. Our theaters have been selling out. So people are going back. I saw Escape Room 2 because it was the only thing that wasn't selling out. And then
I had a good time watching Escape Room when it came out. I watched that
I
here in
didn't like the
Ruidoso.
first one. And I didn't like this one any better.
I did not have a lot of high hopes for the first one. I just wanted to have a good time and I laughed my ass off. And there was some cool little concepts. It reminded me a lot of The Cube.
Mm, but I
Pretty
have no
basic.
desire to watch Fast 9. Like, I hate those films. I like Smokey and the Bandit, but I mean, Fast and Furious movies, they bore the shit out of me,
I know. Well,
you know?
I got a funny story about that. I moved to Ruidoso from Los Angeles. So it was talk about culture shock, right? And I was hanging out with my neighbor who's like a former convict felon.
Hmm.
I don't know how that former works if he's not in. I don't know. But at the time, we were just hanging out, watching TV at his house, just chilling and talking. And he mentioned something about Fast and the Furious, and I said, "Oh yeah, I've only seen the first one, maybe a little bit of the second one."
Hmm.
He looks at me. I think 7 and 8 were coming out at the time or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he says something like he says, "You don't believe in the Fast and the Furious?
No, I
Like
don't.
the holy trinity of Dom Toretto and family?" I was like, "No, am I missing out?" And he's like, "Oh man." And then he shows me a scene from me. So where are you going to see cars do that? It's like, fair point, fair point. But he looked at the whole thing like it was a faith of something to turn to when the world shuts him out. And I respect him for having access to stuff like that. And
Yeah, I get it.
now that the
But
whole family meme has come out, it kind of makes me want to just burn through them all. What would be really fun is to put all 8 or all 9 of them on all at once and just watch them all at the same time.
oh, I get a headache watching Jeepers. I've seen, and I haven't seen them all, but I've seen enough of them to know I don't like them.
Listen,
So
That's kind of my thought. That's kind of been my thoughts about Transformers. I walked out of
Yeah, I don't like those either.
the one they went to China. I walked out halfway through. I was with someone. I was like, you know what? I got better things to do with my day. I don't mind the $8 I dropped on this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I used to do in Texas, I helped run a comedy show very similar to Mystery Science Theater,
Mm-hmm.
where we would do live audio, we would do live commentary on, B movies from the 70s and 80s. And we did movies like Prehistoric Women and oh God, what's that movie called? There's an Italian one with Mariska Hargitay's dad, Mickey Hargitay. Oh God, the Italian title for it is The Swinging Pendulum of Death. Gosh, what is that movie called? We did a bunch of these movies. Gosh, what is that? Mickey Hargitay. Man, this is some wrestling trivia for you. Mickey Hargitay starred in this movie, and it became the thing that encouraged Arnold Schwarzenegger to become a bodybuilder. Because at the time, bodybuilding was such a weird concept. And so he's in this movie actually like oiling and greasing down his muscles to show them off. And it was such a bizarre thing to do and to showcase, culturally speaking. But Schwarzenegger saw it and was blown away at the efforts that can go into to push one's body to the extreme. And so he became a bodybuilder based off of seeing that movie. And so we did that movie, horror film. I'm Googling it right now because it's definitely worth a watch. The Bloody Pit of Horror. That's what it's called. It's
I've
great.
heard of it.
It's fantastic. And so we did this show that we did was called the Wonder Crust Movie Watchers Club. And it was a live comedy show that we did once a month in Fort Worth, Texas. And we would bring 80 to 100 people out to a bar, and myself and a handful of other comedians would have spent a month writing jokes for each movie. And eventually we trimmed that down to, writing them. It took us about a week. And then I would go in as the editor and recut the movies to add in extra gimmicks or extra references. So there's like for example, in that movie, there's a scene where they are exploring a bunch of torture devices in the basement chamber of this castle in, I think, Spain or Italy or something. And they find a standing coffin with spikes in it. And one of the guys is like, oh, what is this? Some kind of coffin? And the other character in the movie says, no, this is a medieval torture device, the infamous Iron Maiden. And of course, naturally, while we're working on this, everyone in the room while we're writing as comedians are instantly transported to Bill and Ted, right? Of saying, Iron Maiden, excellent. And, we tried saying it in time with the scene of the movie, like we would do live, we rehearsed it. And it just wasn't as fun as having the original guys do it. So instead, I started doing kind of like a Robot Chicken style thing where we have a channel flip over to Bill and Ted saying Iron Maiden, excellent, and then channel flip back to Bloody Pit of Horror. And that became sort of a really popular trope with the movies that we would make fun of, was what else can we sneak in that's culturally relevant or societally relevant, or satire of what's happening at the moment in space and time on this planet, politics, sports, whatever. But that we did that with all kinds of movies. I think we've done that show on about 50 or 60 different B classic horror films, from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. A lot of weird ones. We did Escape 2000, which is also called Turkey Shoot in Australia, with Denise Crosby from The Next Generation. did a bunch of random.
That's got Olivia
editing.
Hussey in it too, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
Olivia
know which
Huss.
one you're talking about. It's from the guy who made
It has three
Dead End
different
Drive-In.
titles. Yeah, it has three different titles depending on where it was released. So that was a really fun process. And the big thing that I learned, because I was helping sort of corral all these comedians, half of which weren't even comedians. They were just fans that liked what we were doing, and we had a good sense of humor. And we would just bond together and just constantly try to rebuild and build and build more jokes of what can we do to comment on what's happening in this movie. And the big takeaway that we learned in the first few months of doing the show was if we shit on the movie live, the audience does not want to be there and watch the movie as well. So after a few times of doing the live show, we made a rule that said we can't shit on the movie because people still spent years working to see whatever movie it was get out the door. And I learned to respect that, especially as an editor, going back and slightly cutting up the movie or shortening scenes to help with the audience expectation. Like if there was, like we did a Godzilla movie and I trimmed down some of the Godzilla attacks a city stuff because there's only so many times you can make fun of a building getting knocked over.
Well, you know what? Some movies deserve to be shit on. Pearl Harbor, I say shit on all you want because I
I
thought that
know
movie was a piece of trash.
it's my philosophy, especially as an editor and seeing how long it takes to make a thing, my deal is like, okay, I know it's terrible, but you know what, people still put a lot of effort into this, a lot of time, a lot of worry, a lot of concern, a lot of fights and arguments to make sure a certain thing worked a certain way in the movie. And when I look at movies like Pearl Harbor, like it's not a terrible movie. It
Oh,
doesn't.
yes, it is.
I would
Are you
argue that.
kidding me? When I left that theater, I
I
could
would
have
argue
I could have punched Michael Bay out. They
Michael.
sold the I read an article in the paper that were talking about the studios were trying to figure out how to market that film to Japan, and they decided to market it as a love story. I'm
Sure.
like, yeah, and there was not one three-dimensional Japanese characters. It was just
Whose
fucking
job was that?
assholes, two
Whose job
fucking
at
assholes fighting over a slutty nurse. That's what the
whose,
movie was.
I want to know whose job at Paramount it was to get that email or memo on his desk that morning, like, "Hey Jim, you're in charge of promoting Pearl Harbor to our Japan audience." How did that
Yeah,
conversation go?
like to me, and people ask me what's racist about Pearl. It is a racist movie, and it was also a piece of junk.
Well,
You want to watch a good war movie? Watch Apocalypse Now. At least that one you can feel
Dunkirk.
something.
Um, no, I just, my philosophy, because I've had to fix so many bad movies. I've had to work on all of these movies in the comedy shows, and I've studied them and studied them and studied them. And I just go into it and say, okay, well, this movie was supposed to do this thing, and it executed that job well. It made the only movie that could have been that movie. And Michael Bay is a perfect example of someone who has gotten rid of his own personal governor, and he just makes things that fills seats and sells tickets. And he's very good at that. And that's something that I don't do. I've never done that. And so I commend the dude for being able to do that. And you look at a movie like, I love Bad Boys, and and I love Bad Boys 2 even more. Bad Boys 2 is a flawless joyride cash grab, right? And I love it. It's dumb, it's ridiculous. The explosions are a blast. The dead bodies all over the highway. There's not a lot of movies that can do that. And then you go and look at Bad Boys 3, Bad Boys for Life, and it's only produced by Michael Bay. There's a difference, man. There's a difference. And Michael Bay is not my I don't think he's the greatest director of all time, but he does what he does very well. And there's a shit ton of people out there trying to copy it. There's have you ever watched on YouTube Every Frame a Painting?
I'd much rather watch paint dry than watch Pearl Harbor.
Oh
You
no,
gotta
no,
tell
no,
you
no, no.
that.
There's a YouTube guy that I watch as an editor. He's great. It's called Every Frame a Painting, and he does all these like breakdowns on different styles of directing or different emphasis on objects used in movies, like how Kurosawa uses wind to help tell stories, and then how he did a great one on Robin Williams after Robin passed. And one of the ones, he has like a 12 or 14 minute breakdown of Bayism and how Michael Bay makes movies and how that works. And it's a fascinating watch. I'm not saying every movie should be a Bay movie, definitely not, but like it works. And we try to do the same thing with 13 Fanboy of like, what can we make? How can we make this movie so that it does what it needs to do, not what other movies have done, right? And that was tricky because, we were making this movie without any sort of rhyme or reason of, will this be seen? Will this go out into the theaters? How long is COVID going to last? Will our fans and supporters still be alive when the movie comes out, either by time or by pandemic? And that was a tough little creative bubble to live in, especially to work in with Deb. Deb's great. We're both Leos, which made it. My sister is a Leo. Her birthday is 2 days before mine. But I'm older. It was a big source of contention when we were kids. And we lived across the hallway from each other and just were always at each other's throats and had very strong opinions. And then fast forward 20, 30 years, and I'm making a movie with a Leo, and Deb's birthday is like maybe a week before mine. I think it's coming up. And it's two Leos stuck in the same room wearing face masks, arguing about, which scene, which cut, which take. And we both had very strong personalities. There were a lot of times that Deb and I had to sort of stop and take 5 minutes and breathe and remember that we're both on the same team and fighting for the same task. And it was this really beautiful, there were a lot of heated moments where we had to stop and take a break and say, okay, time out. We're talking about the same thing. We're using different language. Let's go back and be clear about every single aspect of this so that we can both find the route through here. And it was, I'd worked with a lot of different directors in LA, but then to come here and work with Deb, she's so compassionate and warm and kind. And even when things get heated, if and when they did get heated during the day in the edit, we'd still end it with a hug and an embrace. That was tough because the first round of COVID, we tried to keep our 6 feet distance from each other. And the first 6 months, we didn't hug because of, the rules of like, don't hug, no hugging, no physical embracing, blah, blah, blah. Deb's sister lived with her for a time, and she has some minor lung issues. And so if I brought something home to Deb at her house, then the chance of it getting to her sister could be worse. And so for the first 6 months, everybody was very, I wouldn't say panicky, but like we took the right precautions to make sure, because if I got sick and was blown out of commission, that would knock the project out of our time frame. And same thing for Deb. And more importantly, all due respect, I'm not as well, it's more important to me that Deb stays healthy during this process, because if we lost Deb during the edit of Friday the 13th, I don't know what we would do, because she is the spearhead of this entire endeavor. And I can't wait to see what next project she does, whether she brings me in on it or not. And so we were just very careful about making sure that nobody got sick and everybody was okay. And that way we could just stay focused on the task at hand, which was, kill Tracy Savage. Just kidding.
Don't do that. Listen,
No. We'll kill Kane. No, wait. Let's kill Judy. No, wait. Maybe we'll kill. We wanted to kill everybody at the end of the movie. I'll tell you that much.
Go after the people behind Pearl Harbor.
No, we did not make Pearl Harbor. We made a different movie with no Josh Hartnett.
I think if she does a sequel, she should bring Tommy Wiseau in.
Oh, that would be so cool. I think he was. We didn't. Oh no, we did not have Tommy Wiseau. I was thinking of Tommy, the other Tommy. Um, Definitely not Tommy Wiseau. No, that would be
Well, my
fun.
so you say my name's at the beginning and the end of the movie as well?
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. I'm
it
looking
doesn't
for.
have. I think it has Python in the end credits. But at the beginning of the movie, it's just Gilbert.
So it's just Greg Gilbert,
Yeah.
and then at the end of the credits is Greg Python Gilbert.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay, I'll
yeah,
take that.
yeah. I think she had a hard fast rule about like nicknames in the opening credits, just because she wanted to keep it like clean without a lot of like having to, because when you start introducing people's ability to have nicknames in opening credits, then you have these like really long ass things which can be hard to make sure there's enough space for them on screen without distracting from the movie that's beginning to unravel at the time. And then we had one guy come in at the last ditch and brought in a fair amount of money, and that guy got to have a nickname because thank you. That's why. But everyone else sort of had like, and it makes sense, and I'm glad too, because that guy had a really long nickname, and I had to rework that a couple times in order to make it fit on screen, which is fine. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah, my DJ name is Python. The show is Python's Paradise. So no, if it's at the end of the film, that's fine. I'm not
yeah.
gonna. But I do know that, and I remember when Debbie Sue had mentioned it. She said you have your chance to have your picture in a scene with Tracy Savage or Ron Sloan. And I like both, but I have a major crush on Tracy Savage from part three. So I was like, I'm going for this.
Oh yeah, you're definitely in a scene with Tracy. Um, Ron was so cool. I did not know. 2 days before we started shooting the second round, we had a cast and crew party, which was great because some of the crew had already worked on the shoot in July of 2019. And so I knew half of those guys. And when they all came back, it was like a school reunion because we'd already spent a whole month together working together for like 9 months prior. And so I knew, Dominic Weineke, which if you haven't talked to him, Dominic's great. He's the first assistant director, first AD, was there on set every single day.
Okay.
He was great to work with. That guy is his own powerhouse, but then to have him come on as Deb's AD was incredible. Very patient, good communicator between everybody. And then the second round of shooting had that we D showed up and Ron. They both rode together from the airport and showed up to this pre-cast party shoot day. And that was great because I had my dog with me, and her name is DD, Dirty Diana. So we just call her DD the sweetie. And I introduced DD to D Wallace, and she smiled and laughed and said, "Oh, that's what my grandkids call me, Grandma DD." And I was like blown away. So I've got D Wallace sitting there petting my dog. I was blown away. I wish I'd got a picture of it.
I interviewed Dee Wallace back in 2015.
She's a
I
gem, man.
met her
She's
at
a gem.
Horrorama 2018. If you look at my Facebook, in my picture section, there's a picture of me with Dee Wallace, and she remembered me, which was interesting.
She is like a circus fire to work with.
Mm-hmm.
She's intense. She is so professional, but also just like stays in it the whole time. And also she has her very unique style of prep for acting, and that involves her sort of hyping herself up in a very unique way where she's like yelling at top volume. And the first few times she does it, like I did not know what was going on, and I thought we were about to have to call the cops. And I got used to it after a while. But yeah, she is very intense to work with, but gets it, really gets it. And when we're done shooting, she turns it off and is very sweet in between takes and shoots and stuff. I got to interview her on set. I haven't looked at that footage in ages, but she was incredible to work with. I of course grew up with her as the mom in E.T.
Yep.
That's
She
where I know her
signed.
best from.
She signed my Blu-ray of E.T. and of The Howling. So
Wow.
she was a delight to meet. You did tell
Yes.
me on a past message where we are going back and forth preparing this. I remember you said to me in the message, you said, I recognize you. Your picture's definitely in there. A bit bloody, but it's definitely there.
Oh yeah, buddy, it's there.
My picture is
I
involved
think
in a gore scene.
I think you're I think you might be in the next trailer. Uh-oh, my internet connection is unstable. I think you're going to be in the trailer. That shot
Nice.
might be in the trailer. I can't remember. There were a lot of I was impressed by Deb because we had to make sure that a lot of people's names and faces were included on the film. Like on fridges and background photos, and like there's a scene where Judy Aronson is on the phone, but she's sending out autographed photos,
Mm-hmm.
and like two or three of the envelopes were on display, and we had to make sure those were clearly displayed because they had fan names on the envelopes and their addresses. I don't know if that's a breach of contract, but who knows? Maybe the fans will get their own fanboys.
There you go.
That was the coolest thing, man, was working with all these fans of the franchise. It was like a boot camp of Friday the 13th for me. Like I didn't really need to go. Like I went back and watched a bunch of random scenes with people, and my buddy Barry, pointed me in the direction of some of the most epic kills, so I can see on the pacing. And I sent him a lot of cuts of the movie, and I sent my dad and brother, who watch a fuck ton of horror films, way more than I do. And those three guys watch this movie more than anybody has.
Mm-hmm.
And they all gave me a lot of different tips and advice on like what I can do to tighten up this thing or to make this kill work a little better based off of their expertise. And it was and right before I started cutting D, I went back and watched Cujo and The Howling,
Mm-hmm.
just to sort of like get onto her range a little bit. And then the next day I cut a scene, which unfortunately is no longer in the movie. I cut this scene and I showed it to D, and I got D. She sat right next to me on the computer on set and put on a spare. I had two headphones, going into a splitter, and I let her watch from the second headset, and Ron on another headset. And afterwards, D gave me a bunch of great notes on my edit and on the teaser trailer that I cut too. And she's a great producer. Ron was funny. He's a fun dude to have on set. And he was another guy that was, kind of worried about, does he still have it? Can he still do it on camera?
Did was he busy eating all of Ethel's slop?
Ron's a pretty fit guy these days.
Yes, but in part 5,
No,
he ate.
we ate a lot better than Ethel's slop. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, come on, it's the best darn stew in the whole world.
That's what I hear. And I got to meet Ethel. She's sweet as a gem when she's not being Ethel.
Carol Locatel, yep.
Yeah,
I'm
Carol
glad
Locatel.
they got them both in there.
That was fun. We had the movie. The movie was written, and it exists in its written form, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Wait a minute. Do I have? Let me turn some stuff off. My Wi-Fi is going crazy right now. Um,
Yeah, but no, I think it's great that they had them both in the movie, and I'm looking forward to hearing those two jive back and forth.
they have. I hope we can do. I'm hoping we can do a director's cut because we were under pressure to keep the movie at a certain length and time. I don't know if you're aware, but the original cut we had for the movie was over 2.5 hours long.
So what? Look, if people can sit through 3 hours of something as boring as Titanic
Or Pearl Harbor.
or Pearl Harbor, they can sit through 13 Fanboy. I saw Titanic the same day I saw Tomorrow Never Dies. And I had a hard time staying awake through Titanic. I was that bored.
Is that the one with Lucy Liu or Michelle Yeoh? Tomorrow
Oh,
Never
Tomorrow
Dies.
Never Dies. I think it was Michelle Yeoh, I think. And
Right.
yeah, it was her. And when I saw Tomorrow Never Dies for the second film, and I perked right up. It was so much more
Or
entertaining.
are you one of those guys that goes to see like just takes a day out of the month and goes to see a bunch of movies in one day at a
Not
theater?
anymore.
I'm definitely that guy, especially when there's a lot going on and I just need a day by myself. I just
I
turn the phone off
see,
and
well, I see
I
one
watch
movie
four
a
or five in
week.
a day.
Yeah, I used to do that. Here's the thing, in 2001, I got frustrated with the movies because I remember 1999, I loved so many movies that came to the theater. Whereas in 2001, I hated so many movies. Pearl Harbor pissed me off. I didn't like Freddy Got Fingered and Corky Ramono and stuff like that. But down
Well,
at
there's
the,
your problem. You're watching trash.
well, that was all it was coming. Down at the university, they had a film society. You know what they were playing?
Good stuff.
They were playing Amelie,
Hmm.
Mulholland Drive,
Hmm.
Gosford Park, stuff like that. And I was like, oh my goodness, those were films I wanted to watch.
Yeah. When I was living in LA, I used to go to Quentin Tarantino's movie theater, the
I
New
love Quentin
Beverly's.
Tarantino. Yeah.
He owns a theater. I was working at a couple different editing outhouses,
Mm-hmm.
working on some Marvel shows, and I worked a little bit on Peter Rabbit
Mm-hmm.
and Hotel Transylvania 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked for this company for like 2 or 3 months, and Tarantino owned a theater that he bought. It was an older theater, and he bought it and refurbished it and everything. And it's a classic run cinema only, and so everything's on film, projected by a film projector, and it has classic run, time appropriate trailers and cartoons that play on before each movie. And it's $8 for a ticket, and each ticket was a double feature, unless it was like a crazy long movie. So like if I went to go see, I think I went and saw The Good and Bad and the Ugly there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's obviously not going to be billed as a double feature. It has an intermission. That's its own thing. I saw Reservoir Dogs there, Pulp Fiction. I also saw
I interviewed the
Halloween.
Gimp from Pulp Fiction.
Oh, cool. Uh, it must have been tight. Um, I saw Halloween Night at that theater, Creep Show, and a double feature with Trick or Treat, which I didn't know anything about that movie, and I went in blind, and there were more people there for the screening of Trick or Treat that came after Creep Show. Creep Show, the audience was only half full. Trick or Treat, the place was packed and people were dressed up. I was blown away. That movie is hilarious, and totally under the radar. It's a definite cult classic. Much like I feel 13 Fanboy will be, it'll be an instant cult classic.
Kind of like when I was in Toronto last in 2019, I went to the Royal Theater, and I saw a double billing of White Christmas and Black Christmas.
Hilarious.
White
Um,
Christmas had some people, but Black Christmas was packed.
for
I'm
for
talking about the original Black Christmas, not the junk that came afterwards.
sure. I saw for Christmas at the New Bev, I saw Die Hard Christmas night with a buddy of mine. Um, and I stay for the end of the credits for every movie out of respect for everybody that put blood, sweat, tears, and time in to make see the movie get done. And I'm hanging out. I still had my backpack with like my computer and hard drives and editing gear. I sat with that under my seat the whole time. And I was just like, I picked the backpack up. Everyone's outside. And I'm walking out towards the back, just watching the tail end of the credits, leaning up against the back wall. And I hear a voice and I look over, and there's Quentin Tarantino sitting in the back row of his own movie theater, watching Die Hard with me and 150 other fans Christmas night, the greatest Christmas movie to watch. And I went over, and there was some old fat white guy in the way. And I just kind of like, I remember casually just like stepping like right past him, sitting in it. He was sitting in the row in front of Tarantino. And I just kind of like completely cut off their conversation and stuck my hand right in the middle. And I was like, Mr. T, it's a pleasure to meet you. I just want to say, this is the greatest theater I've ever been to. It's like a church going experience for me. And I hope you keep making theaters like this, or this experience is just great, blah, blah, blah. I appreciate, whatever it was. I was totally fan stricken. And he was very chill and very cool. Like, all right, man, cool. Thanks. Just Tarantino. And I remember the look on the guy's face, but I didn't recognize who he was, the other dude, him just being like shocked and appalled. Like he was wearing a suit, looked very important, thought highly of himself, and just being like, who is this idiot interrupting my conversation with Tarantino? And I'm like, I don't know who you are. Get out of here. I'm shake this man's hand real quick. And a couple weeks later, or like a month or two later, the whole Harvey Weinstein scandal broke. And I realized that was who I pushed out of the way to shake Tarantino's hand, because I recognized his face in the pictures. And I was like, oh shit. That was a crazy little deal. Being able to have access to movies and theaters and screenings like that out in Los Angeles was just, oh man, that was a good time. That was a good time.
Yeah, Harvey Weinstein, I think, liked the smell of his own shit, I think.
Yeah, that was one of the big reasons why I left LA. I just couldn't see myself climbing a ladder like that where guys like that are in charge and get to call all the shots. And so I had to step away.
Well, that's why Adam Marcus made Secret Santa the way he did.
Mm. I hope Troy Duffy comes out of this a little humbler. I mean, I saw Overnight, and that's a pretty fascinating take on things. I was a big fan of Boondock Saints when I was a kid, but then when I saw the way that he treated people on set, that kind of changed my opinion of him as a director. And I agreed largely with Weinstein on blacklisting the guy. And now that Weinstein's gone, Troy Duffy gets to enter the scene again. And I hope he gets cool. I don't know the guy, but I saw Overnight. And then I met the guy that directed Overnight, and we had very long conversations about that whole situation. So I believe a lot of the stuff that happened. And so I walked away from LA and wanted to work with people I respected and people that respected me. And so when I met Deb and we connected, we met outside of the Mexican restaurant I was working in at the time. And we talked. I visited with her and her husband. I talked about what bothers me in movies and what I'm looking for as an editor, and the rules I try to pay attention to make sure that the story stays consistent and we don't lose the audience. And we try to keep some continuity, as clean and clear as possible. And both her and her husband were very appreciative of that. And so I think that's what brought me onto it. And I was just happy to work with someone who was pleasant and not a misogynist. And I'm a big fan of creative people who truly give a shit about their project, but also give a shit about their people that they're working with. And Deb's great because she's a lot like me, where I am completely motivated by the task at hand, where I can have a tendency to railroad people that are in my way. But if someone comes to me and they're like, hey, you missed this thing, this is very important, this person is very important, I will make the effort to stop and address that situation and say like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm so focused on this thing. Let me take the time to address what you're saying to me right now. And Deb was great about that. And it was really neat process to go from Weinstein world to Voorhees planet.
Yeah.
I was really blessed to go from LA to working on this, little indie horror film production with an absolute, legend and humble saint. She's very cool to work with and very blessed with the career that she's had. And now she's using that to her advantage. And I respect the hell out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a pretty neat little process.
One of the things, like when I got involved with this early, I remember, because this is an early shirt. I remember because I put my interviews up for their anniversaries, and one of them I put up was I've had Tom Matthews on a couple times.
Oh
And
yeah,
Tom Matthews had stated to me that
he was supposed to be in this movie.
Yeah, he said that he had to bail on it for scheduling reasons or something.
Sounds
And
about right.
I felt bad because when I went to Horrorama, I told Debbie Sue that I'd wear this there and promote the movie. Outside of Kane Hodder, Tom Matthews got the most attention on the shirt.
Yeah. So that shirt's kind of dated then.
I got it because Tom Matthews was on it too, because it was after he had left the project, and I was like, I want to get this while he's on it.
Right.
Yeah.
That was an interesting little deal, because what ended up happening was the movies. This is like this in almost every movie. The movie script is very different from the movie itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the script was cut and dry. This is the movie we're going to make. And then in July, the shoot that we did brought in, I think at the last minute, schedules cleared up, and we got Kane Hodder and Jennifer Banco for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And we had them together for those 2 days. And so Deb put together some scenes for them to act in. And then it was my job as an editor to find a way to work them into the movie. Because they're in the movie and Fanboy's there too. I won't get into it, but so we had to sort of make that work because Kane is such a powerhouse. So we lost Tommy, but we got Kane and Banco, and Kane was cool as a cookie, man. He was cool as a fan, I heard somebody say once. But that was tricky, man, because we had to sort of work them into the movie, and that's part of what added to the extremely long runtime was, wow, in order to fit everybody in this full scale, we had to do a lot of really selfish trimming throughout the film. And so we lost a lot of playtime with different actors and different things here and there. And Deb and I struggled on where to trim and the order of things. And we had a big, I learned this trick in LA with the producer I was working with. We worked on Navy SEALs versus Zombies, Kyle Tequila and I, and we put every single scene of the movie onto different colored Post-it notes. And each one of the Post-it notes represented a different type of scene: action, talking, exposition, nighttime, daytime, whatever it was. And instead of sitting there on the computer and constantly restructuring and moving scenes around, which is just a memory hog, and you get crashes all the time that way. And it just takes too long to like watch it again and again and again. When we've restructured it this way, we just restructured everything using the Post-it notes on a wall. And I did the same thing with 13 Fanboy. So there was one week there where I barely even touched the computer, and Deb and I just sat in front of like a trifold poster board, like a science fair poster board with those edges, and it had like 50 post-it notes, and we were just constantly moving these post-it notes around on the poster board so we could, how can we fit everybody in this movie, still give fan service, still tell a good story, still have, you know, a tempo that carries the movie, and still have some intrigue and mystery, and leave people wanting more. And that was a very difficult task, but I'm pretty happy with the result. God, plus Kane was so cool. The funniest thing about that was because he showed up on set, and like Jason West was the key grip, and Dominic Weineke was first AD, and you had a bunch of costumers and makeup people, and all the half of all the other crew guys were supporters and fans as well.
Mhm.
And so when Kane showed up on set, I knew from everybody else that this guy was important, but I didn't know him the way everyone else has known him. And I remember Jason looking at Kane across the room, and then looking at me and being like, those eyes, man, those eyes get me. And I just saw a nice guy, Kane Hodder, those eyes. But those eyes for everybody else was just like, you know, looking into death's soul. And Kane would, man, he would lean into that and freak people out and just stare at them across the room until they like walked away. It was great.
Another person I heard you guys had lost to is Adrian King.
Adrian King, and that's a real deal, because this script was, as I understand it, originally written for Adrian King.
He was my second guest doing this podcast. My first was Tommy Wiseau, believe it or not.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
Adrian King read the script, and it was too close to home for her because she actually did have a home invasion where a fanboy was over her bed watching her sleep. And we allude to that in this film at a certain point. And I think it was just too close to home for her, and it was too real. And so she, you know, she kept minimizing, and then eventually scheduling and too close to home. And she pulled out, and we got Dee Wallace instead, which is great. Dee's a powerhouse and an 80s scream queen. I think it works out just the same, if not better. Dee is her own level of clout that she brings to way beyond the Friday the 13th franchise, you know?
Yep.
I would love to get Adrian King in a part 2 if we do that. But it was, yeah, so we lost Adrian King and Tom Matthews for scheduling, but we got Kane, Benko, Lar Park Lincoln, who was legendary.
Lar Park Lincoln as hilarious as she seems.
She's a riot, man. She's a riot. She's funny, man.
I had her on, yep.
She's an incredible improviser. There was some stuff with her, was a lot of her stuff was, you know, Deb might kill me for this, but a lot of stuff that Lar did was completely improvised. We had her, I'm trying to figure out what I can say without giving away too many things. We had her in sort of a locked box scenario, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And well, you can tell from a little bit from the trailers, but she sort of was in a place where she had enough rope to help her hang herself, right? And that was really interesting to watch her work with, because she didn't have a lot of people to act with and scenes and stuff. She had her own thing, and it was my job as the editor to sort of take what she did, whether it was working or not at the time. I had to take what she did on camera and make it work in the edit. And that was such a gift to work with, because she put so much out there on the line. Like if you watch the raw footage, it's extremely awkward and weird, right? It's just this one person by themselves in this environment. literally just bouncing shit off of the walls, right? And you never know what's going to stick. And then me as the editor at 2 or 3 a.m., I'm just sitting there in my house, all the lights off, headphones on, like, okay, what can I do here? How can I make this work? And there were a couple times where there was one time in the edit where she switched modes from, she just turned it off. She was in this heightened state of reality in this scene. And then 30 seconds later, just switched modes 100%, night and day. And something about it worked really well. And it didn't really make all that sense on set, in my opinion. But in the edit, I was able to connect the dots in a way that neither Deb and I had thought of during production. And that was a really neat thing. And so Laura definitely helped put this movie over its intended goal in terms of like story-wise, I think. I would be super impressed to work with Laura in another improvisational setting like that. She was really cool to work with. Judy was fun, very intense. That was also fun, was just getting, whenever we got all these guys all together on set, hearing stories from their time on the Friday movie. Like Deb didn't even know she was in a Friday the 13th movie until they were on set. And Judy talked about drowning and nearly freezing to death. And
thankfully, Ted White fixed that problem.
Yeah, and then Jennifer and Kane, we had them on set one day and hanging out before we shot some stuff. And Jennifer Benko told this incredible story about how Kane saved her life on set. And she was apparently out in the water on a log or something and got picked up and was floating downstream. And Kane actually, I think in his getup as Jason, like swam out to the water and rescued little baby Jennifer Benko and brought her back to the shore. And just picture like big hulking Kane Hodder, Jason Voorhees carrying this little girl back to shore and hugging her, making sure she's okay. Is that signed by Kane?
Nope. It's
not yet.
By get out here. Ted White.
Nice, dude. There were so many of these on set. Jason West had the most ones. He had the most autographs. He had Corey's, he had Deb's. I mean, it was already half full by the time production started. And by the time production ended, he had Tracy Savage, Jennifer Benko, Judy Aronson, CJ Graham, Corey Feldman, and Kane Hodder. Oh, and Ron. Yeah, I've got a couple. We had a great, we shot 2 days of a convention scene that the movie has in the film with all these people at the convention. And that was tough because we shot those with 2 different cinematographers, 2 different locations, 2 different casts. And my job as the editor was to edit those 2 scenes together to make it look like all one location, to make it look like all these people were there in the same spot on the same day. That was pretty cool and wild. But yeah, that was great because everybody got like a shit ton of autographs that day. If you were on set that day, everybody got autographs from CJ and Corey and Dee and Judy for free. It was wild. I mean, they were just like, they're doing the bit for the scene, but then they had all these leftovers that just gave away to everybody anyways too. That was a riot.
Ted White was my favorite Jason from the part 4 of the final chapter.
Nice.
Like, he was just so intense, and I've had him on the show 4 times. And it was just, he talked about working with Corey Feldman, but he also talked about getting Judy Aronson to safety during that scene too. But
I wish I had interviewed Corey Feldman on set day 1. I was so focused on other things, I missed it. Because I had my copy of The Lost Boys. I have a Ninja Turtle wallet because he was the voice of Donatello. And I had a Goonies lighter.
How about Gremlins?
Gremlins. I missed the Gremlins boat growing up. I watched it later in life, but I missed it growing up. I didn't have as strong a connection with that one.
I love Gremlins.
But I did watch it for Christmas, for COVID Christmas with a buddy.
Mm-hmm.
We watched Die Hard the night before, and then the next morning we watched Gremlins. Yeah, Corey was cool, man. Let's see who. Kane was probably the most fun to work with because he'd seen it all, and we were doing. This might not surprise you, but we were doing a shit ton of stunt work with Kane Hodder. And he was great, man. He was very patient, and then he was still kind of teaching. It was like film stunt class academy with Kane Hodder for 2 days.
What about CJ Graham? What was it like working with him?
He was cool, man. He was very cool. We did some stunt work with CJ as well. We had him for like almost a week, like 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
He was very professional, very, very humble. He's a fucking giant. Like I'm pretty tall, but CJ is jolly green compared to me, man. And he was humble, man, because he only did one Friday movie, if I'm correct, part 6, right?
Yeah, to me, part 4 and 6 are the best of the franchise.
Because there's the argument of the better movies versus the better Jasons, right?
I think the best Jason, in my opinion, was Ted White in the final chapter. Because to me, the intensity, I think Ted White was the scariest, you know? So Ted White was my favorite Jason. But if I was to say which one is the best movie, probably Jason Lives Part 6, with the final chapter being a close second. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take the time at some point. Probably see if I can sit down and watch them with my buddy Barry. He's already walked me through the whole Tommy trilogy. Dealio. It's a bummer they couldn't bring Feldman back for the third one.
Yeah. Yeah, but hey, we got Tom Matthews, and how cool is that, huh?
Man, Deb and I have floated around so many different concepts for 13 Fanboy Part 2.
I know. I told her. I said, "Bring in Tommy Wiseau."
Yeah. No,
bring in Tommy Wiseau and Neil Breen.
That'd be so weird. That would be a different kind of movie, man. You know, I really liked The Disaster Artist. That was a fun little movie.
I've got that here on Blu-ray. Yeah.
The Disaster Artist. I watched that movie in North Hollywood, where I lived. And oh man, what was so weird is I watched that movie literally in the same area, because at the time James Franco had an acting academy right down the street from the theater that I watched in, and right next to this little cafe that I would go to sometimes and edit. And there was like the Lamel Theater, and then another like a stage theater, like a playhouse, and it was right on the corner of Burbank and Lankershim in North Hollywood. And so he shot most of that movie right in that area. And then I went and watched it in a theater on the street where it was shot. That was such a bizarre experience, of just like seeing the movie and then walking outside and seeing the exact same streets that the characters were walking down. That was wild. Oh man, yeah. I forgot I edited on a James Franco project too. That one was great because I just did behind the scenes on this movie he did called Future World, and it's got I think RZA, Method Man, and Snoop Dogg in it, and it's this post-apocalyptic Mad Max Fury Road ripoff, and he did all these behind the scenes interviews in some studio place, and he did them like 4 or 5 back to back in a row. And so by the time he got to his interview for Future World, the dude was just like passing out and was constantly breaking to yawn. And so it was really hard for me to edit because he was constantly yawning during his interview process, and I'm sitting there yawning while he's yawning. It was tough, man. And he's just like, that movie that let out a big bear yawn and then get back into it. What an interesting character.
Yeah, cause I think if they did a sequel to 13 Fanboy, could have Tommy Wiseau, Neil Breen, and the Trailer Park Boys.
That would be interesting.
There you go.
Think of, dude, this movie was great, man. I got to do 2 scenes with Corey Feldman. Well,
Mhm.
I was in one physical scene with Corey Feldman, and the other scene with, wait, yes, the other scene I am in with Corey Feldman, but it's just my voice. I'm on a cop squawk radio.
Mhm.
But that was super neat. I remember in the movie I play a sassy gay hairdresser named Dallas Hurlbert.
Okay.
And it was, it's one of those characters. I love that not because I'm the character, but I love that this character in this movie exists because he almost does not belong in the film, right? Like he has nothing to do with the horror franchise or anything. He's just a character that's there in a random scene where other important information related to the story is presented, right? But myself and another character are just flies on a wall in this scene. And I helped with the audition process with Deb, and I did that. I read for that character. I read for a bunch of characters just so she could see these other actors. I knew I wasn't going to take any of those characters, but I read for plenty of characters. And I read for this character, and Deb laughed her ass off. And she's like, "Congratulations, Riley. That's your part in the movie." And I thought she was kidding. And then when I saw the breakdown for the cast call sheet on day 1, and I saw my name listed there at 7 a.m., I was like, "Oh, fuck." And so I thought she was kidding. And so I had to put together my outfit, and I put my hair up I was growing my hair out at the time. So I put it up in a little man bun, and I curled up my mustache and coiffed up my beard, and I wore like really tight pants. And I really tried to channel all the gay guys I've ever worked with at any restaurant or any other organization, where they have all the wisdom and knowledge, 100% sass. But are definitely still looking to get some, hopefully somewhere. And it was a riot. But then I definitely, really honed in on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, Jonathan. I forget his name. The main guy with the long brown hair and the curly mustache. So I tried to hone in on that. I am kind of trying to flirt with Corey's character in the movie. That was pretty fun. So I milked it. And the first couple takes, I was real subtle, and Deb like yelled at me across the room in front of like 50 people. And she's like, "Riley, more sass, 100% sass." And I'm like, "Okay, right. Let me turn it on." I'm like, "Okay, guys, it was a fucking blast to do that, like bucket list, to do a scene with Corey Feldman. Done, checked off my list. Even if I don't have any like direct lines with him, it's unavoidable. I'm definitely in that scene with him. And then I think I'm in the movie. I think I have like 7 appearances if you count my voice. The rest are just like cross-bys and walk-bys that nobody else will recognize, of course. I helped with a lot of the background action and a lot of the group scenes. So I'm in a few of those, got a lot of friends in that stuff. And then the only other person that's in the movie more than me and the stars, of course, is Val A. Williams, who is a local in Ruidoso. She was a production coordinator, set dresser, props master, helped with costumes, schedules, assistants to Deb and other actors. She was a stunt double for like 4 or 5 different actors in the movie. And she recently just had a child. Val is I remember she came to the audition and didn't get a part. And Deb and I were looking for a production coordinator to come in for the second half of shooting. And I was like, "Dude, just get Val. Val's incredible." And so she did, and brought in Val. That movie, that's someone you ought to talk to, is Valerie Williams. She's also she did her own modeling photos for the film. And they're just breathtaking images. And Deb and her husband, Rich, had them printed and they're up all over on display in the film, in a scene at somebody's house. And then she actually modeled in the film, playing the girl in these photos. I think in the movie, Judy is a photographer. Her character does some photography work, and those photos are supposed to be by Judy's character, but Val actually took them all timed them and everything, or did remote control photo taking. You're gonna love them. They're breathtaking work. But yeah, that movie could not have been made without Valerie Williams. That was some wild stuff.
Well, there's definitely some other people we got to bring up here, because Never Hike Alone was phenomenal. And I think it's interesting that like Debbie Sue must have been be in agreement, because she brought in Vincent DeSanti and Andrew Leahy from that film. Talk about working with them.
That was cool, man. Andrew was a blast. I didn't know them all that well the way everyone else did when they came onto set, because I kind of came into this family adopted, right? And a lot of these people either knew each other from the industry out in LA, because I had just left the industry, didn't want anything to do with it. And then all of a sudden, all these people start showing up in town and they're talking about La Brea tar pits and the 5 and the 110 and blah, blah, blah. That blew my mind. But those guys, talk about a couple of idiots, like just having an absolute blast everywhere they go. It was like babysitting two rambunctious brothers. Like when one does one thing and you finally get him to calm down, and the other one is setting the toilet on fire, right? Like that was what those guys were like, just constantly one-upping each other and doing bits, and they kept it fun. Vince was consummate professional. We went back and forth on a couple of the edits that I made, because he's an editor as well. And so we bonded on some of that unique stuff, and I let him look at some of the takes. Like I said, he's the guy that pushed me to go down the giallo route and study a little bit on that cutting style and that horror style. And that really pushed me. That was a really neat process. He actually helped me design a poster for one of the movies inside the movie. There's a movie inside the movie called Snuffed Out. He designed the poster for that. That was a pretty cool process. We spent a couple hours. I was directing that, and then he was doing the labor on Photoshop. Had a couple beers together. That was great. That was during COVID, so it was over the internet. Andrew was a blast to fuck with on set. Constant pranking each other. If anybody was going to break during a scene, it was Andrew Leahy, though. I had to edit out a lot of bloopers from that guy. I'm hoping to cut together a blooper reel at some point. If we can get the funds for like a director's cut, I know Deb and I would love to put that out, because there's a lot of fun stuff we had to trim for time. But I remember one time there was okay, I can talk about this, I think. There was a sexy, steamy scene or something, and it was a closed set, right? There were a few closed sets on this production, and it was only Chris, his scene partner, Deb, the camera person, the sound guy, and production assistant in the room who had the clapboard, who had the clap. I got to be very careful about how I say these things. So Vanessa Yanta Wright, she was a production assistant in that scene. And that space we rented a house, and everybody else was confined to the living room and kitchen. And we all had to keep it down and stay quiet during the shooting times. So we would get like, hey, we're shooting for the next 5 minutes. Everyone shut the hell up. And I'm just sitting there on a computer, like editing with headphones on and having to keep it down. And I remember that was tough, because the only bathroom in the house was inside the bedroom. And so everybody would have to hold it and then wait to go use the bathroom. And they're shooting a sex scene, and somebody would have to go in there and blow up the toilet. And then they'd have to leave and light a candle and come back and keep shooting that scene, steamy sex scene, if you know what I mean. And I remember, it was a big thing because there is some nudity in the film. And as an editor, everyone's like kind of joking about the fact that we won't get to see any of the nudity in there. Everyone was cool and it was like a tight-knit family, but out of respect for everybody involved, those were closed set scenes. It's just how it works. But the jokes on set were like, oh man, we don't get to see anything, blah, blah, blah. But I'm the editor, so I see everything anyways. And so that was kind of a funny bit, but I remember like, I joked about that. I was like, oh, I get to see it all. I'm not worried about it. Whatever they're going to do in there, I'm going to see it here in about 20 minutes as soon as they hand me the cards for it. Because I had to go through and collate all the footage. I worked as assistant editor, and then Deb brought me on as lead editor once I started really cutting. And then I took the lead and cut like 80% of the movie. And then Deb did a lot on her own space and really helped kind of work from the backseat producing position, which is my preference, is having someone who has a very clear vision sort of pointing me in the right direction. Mm-hmm. But I remember sitting on set that day, and his character's name is Chris, so I always do that. Andrew was laying in bed, and they're taking a water break like you do. Mm-hmm. And he's laying in bed, and everyone's bummed that they don't get to see, Andrew's tight little body bouncing around on the mattress in there. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I don't need to see that. And I look and see Andrew laying in bed, and he kind of catches my eye from across the room. And there's like a dozen people milling about between us in the house. And someone starts to slowly close the bedroom door. And I just kind of do one of these little under the chin, little kissy waves to Andrew. And as he's got like one leg laying outside of the bed, and the top half of his body is just completely exposed, and he's got bed head, and it's definitely a steamy room in there. Nobody's allowed to get involved. And I remember him blowing me a kiss through the door as the door like got shut, and I was just like, ooh, shivers. Ooh. God, there's not a lot of dudes that I've seen naked as much as I've seen Andrew Lady.
Talk about Haley Greenbauer. Now I just,
Talk about a pretty lady, you know what I mean? Yeah, that was very cool. And it was neat to be able to work with the two of them, especially in that capacity that they both trusted me as an editor, knowing that I'm going to see a lot of personal stuff, but also it's my job to protect that and make them look good and not be a creepy perv about it the whole time. It just comes with the nature of the deal. They were cool, man. They had a great chemistry. They're really incredible on scene. I'm going to be worried for Andrew's wife because their chemistry on screen is incredible. Deb cut all the steamy scenes. I cut all the horrific stuff. Yeah, Chris was cool. They were funny. I remember one day on BTS, I got footage of Andrew taking a nap on Vince's shoulder. And they're just like sitting on a couch together. And I think it was actually the two of them taking a nap together, just like two bros with their heads resting on each other on the couch. That's a pretty funny bit. Yeah, he's a funny dude.
We have other people to bring up too. Like I've had Noelle Berger on here. I've had Christy Fontenot. Haven't had Lisa Perez, but I understand that
they all helped with one big day, the convention scene we shot at a local convention center in Ruidoso, right next to a golf course and postal office. And I remember that day was particularly hairy because, like I said, that was that was a tough scene because we had to shoot part of this horror convention scene with the people we had, on our July shoot, namely Corey Feldman. And then the next shoot, we had all these other people that are also in the same scene. So we had to rebuild this convention center scene in a different location with kind of different, drastically different lighting, a different camera, a different cast, a different crew, a different camera person. And that was super tricky, but the thing that made it work, one of the things that made it work outside of Deb, of course, is the flexibility of the camera crew and Ben Meredith, the DP, and but also the help of Christy Fontenot, Lisa Perez, Kenneth Slate, Noli Berger, Noli Berger, David Miller, and Kathy Clements Miller.
Okay.
I think it's his wife. I'm blanking on everything.
I've had Dave Miller on the show here, so yeah.
Yeah, so they all came in, and basically we shot the convention. We had to fake it to make it look like, one of those massive horror conventions, right? But it's actually in like a very small space, but we needed to fake it to make it look like this big thing. This is the real movie magic here, right? The nitty gritty of it. So we had a table built for the day that we shot with Corey Feldman with a couple banners of some, movies that exist inside of Deb Voorhees' universe. One of them was like a short film that she had made called The Lunch Ladies or something. And so we had a couple posters up for that table that Corey Feldman interacted with. And we built this entire huge space that day that we shot with Corey, and it was incredible. And so in order to blend them together with the footage that we shot with Judy Aronson, Haley Greenbauer, Dee Wallace, Laura Park Lincoln, CJ Graham, Jennifer Banco, and Kathy, Carol Locatel, and Ron Sloan. We had like 7 guys all in one location at the second time we shot the convention scene. And so one of the things to tie it together was we had this dedicated wall that Corey was in front of a table presenting, a presenter's table at a convention, right? And then there was like a naked black wall to the left of it that we didn't really focus on or address too much. And so what I tried to do, and I got these notes out to, I was converting or doing something with footage, so I couldn't get there to help with the set dress. And so thankfully Deb or Valerie sent my set dressing note requests to this group of supporters that showed up to help that day. And now they're listed as set dressers and prop and set cleaners. I can't remember, but they're all there because that day they basically set up the convention to look like the other half of this convention set that we built, right? So this convention set, picture a big Baptist U, right? That's what they call them here in the South, of like you have a big collection of tables that make a giant U shape, right? The day we shot with Corey, we had like the right arm of the U, and that was it. And then the day we shot with everybody else, we had the middle part of the U and the left part of the U. And so I needed to make sure for continuity's sake in the edit that that made sense fourth dimensionally, right? You're not thinking fourth dimensionally, Marty. And so I tried explaining this to Deb, and she just had way too much on her plate to make it make sense. And thankfully, I explained it to Lisa and Kristen, or it got through to them, and they helped save the day with that. Mm-hmm. And they helped dress up this set to make it look like. And then I came in and looked at it. I was like, okay, cool, pretty close. Let's move these, and these things. And that was, my mistake could have been to bring in footage from that other shoot date that we did with Corey Feldman, to show it off to our camera person and these crew and helpers. That was my mistake that I didn't bring it with me, because we'd already had that scene cut from our previous time on the edit together. But it worked out, and they put together this entire convention center scene, and we spent the day on it, and it was incredible. And then they broke it down, and were very patient, and everybody was excited to be there. You could tell. Um,
I
it was pretty
heard
neat.
I had interviewed Sean Clark back in January, and he he was supposed to be part of the convention scene, and he said unfortunately due to his schedule he wasn't able to do it. He said he's supposed to do something where he took this headpiece off and it would be him, you know, and he said he wish he could have
Bummer.
done it, but he said he wasn't able to be there for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a couple little surprise guests in that convention scene.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the cool things was in order to really tie it together, we sourced a YouTube sensation guy named James A. Janice, who
Okay.
who does a YouTube show where he goes to horror conventions and talks to
I'm
people.
familiar with him. Yeah.
And so we got this footage of him because the only person we lacked in the convention scene was having at the convention scene was Kane Hodder. And so we got footage from a James A. Janice convention at Monster Palooza, I think, in California.
Mm-hmm.
And that footage had him meeting Kane Hodder and getting like physically attacked by Kane Hodder as a bit, which I'm guessing he does a lot. And so that was great because that's sort of once we roped that in and sourced that footage and included James in this project, suddenly, boom, now we're going to have an even bigger fan base roped into this movie. And so I really like that aspect of this movie, the realness of it, because we have a shit ton of legitimate 13 fanboys in the movie, right? But then 3 of them are actual like presenters and, get to showcase their personality. Like you're a fan and you interview these people and you've got a picture and title on the movie. But these guys actually got to sort of come in and help present necessary information and exposition into the story itself. So James A. Janice was there and he gave us credibility for our horror convention scene. And then Ben D. Atley is there and he gives us some exposition about, I don't know, stuff. And then same thing goes for.
I wish you guys could have got the cinema snob.
We got, oh yeah, he could have been interesting. We had James A. Janice, Ben D. Atley, and we had, oh criminy, what's that guy's name? His wife did some paintings. Lee McCoy,
Oh, I know who he is.
Drum
Yeah.
Dums.
Yeah.
Yeah. He did he actually did a lot because we had different takes from him and some of the stuff we could use and some of the stuff we couldn't because of background material like posters and stuff
Yeah.
in his space because both Ben and Drum Dums Lee they were in the guise and caricature of their own show, right? And so we brought their show into the movie. And so their show exists in the 13 Fanboy universe and gives the audience vital information about the story. That was really neat to sort of have them get involved. And I'm sure that was neat for them, especially for James A. Janice. He didn't even know he was going to be in the movie. And he just gets this random email from Deborah Voorhees. Says, "Hi, James, we love your stuff. Can we put you in the movie, please?" Yeah, sure. That was pretty neat.
I've had Chris Norris on here a couple times. Now, from what I am getting the feeling of, I heard he has a pretty gruesome death scene. Would you argue that his was the best death scene, or would you say in the back of your mind, you don't have to tell me what it is?
Oh, right. His what can I say about that death scene? It's a good death scene. It's really good. That is credit to Nora Hewitt,
Mm-hmm.
our special effects guru,
Mm-hmm.
who couldn't tell us at the time, but she had just left production on The Mandalorian to come do this movie. And she was hanging out with all these Star Wars nerds on set, and she couldn't say shit because of the NDA. And then when it came out that she worked on Mandalorian on the IG unit, I was blown away that she managed to keep it under wraps. Chris had a really cool scene. His was probably, honestly, his was the most immersive and took the most time, I would say. His took the most time, had the most special effects to it. Um, it took us the better part of a day to shoot his death scene. It took about, once we were rolling and set up, I want to say the whole thing took about 4.5 hours to shoot. And it's gone. Like, it happens. It's the blink of an eye, right? It is a gruesome, violent death. And so that actually was the first scene I cut for the whole movie. And that's funny because it actually takes place in this, like, my original cut, it was a 15-minute slash and grab of just like 5 or 6 people dying in just rapid fire, right? Or getting captured or whatever it is. And you're in that period. Your face is right in that chunk of time as well. And so that was actually the first thing. But the very minute part of it was Chris Norris's death. And that was, a lot of camera angles in about 7 seconds, right? And it's gruesome. It's gnarly. It's gnarly as hell. It looks great. The funny thing about that is we shot that at a community college in Ruidoso, New Mexico. ENMU. Oh man, did we put them in the credits? Oh boy. We shot that in ENMU, Eastern New Mexico University, in 3 locations, 3 scenes, 2 locations. And one of the locations still has blood on the carpet of the classroom to this day. It was supposed to wash out. We put a plastic sheet down and everything, but blood gets everywhere. If you've ever watched, any movie, it's everywhere. His was in a hallway, a great hallway. Love a good hallway death. And what's funny is maybe a month or so after we shot that scene, I met a friend of mine in Ruidoso who would eventually become my roommate for 2 years. And we shot that death scene literally right outside my buddy's office at the college. He was the chief technical officer. And so I showed him the raw footage of it one day when we were living together. And he was like, oh yeah, that's my office right there. You killed the guy right outside my office. I'm like, yeah, well, yeah. sorry, not sorry. His scene was a lot of fun to cut. Is it the best death scene in the movie?
I don't know what happens to him, but I've heard his was quite complex.
His was very, very complex. Nora Hewitt had a table at the other end of the hallway with like a dozen or so props and models and tools and glue.
You got to remember the Chris Norris doubled for Harrison Ford in Crystal Skull, the Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I look at this guy a whole different way, Chris Norris. You didn't know that? Yeah, he doubled for Harrison Ford in some scenes in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull.
That's too bad. It could have been for a better movie.
Yeah, Vader's was my favorite of the.
I enjoyed Crystal Skull, but not as much as the others, obviously.
Yeah.
When they went to Aliens,
yeah.
Mostly I was just bummed because the rest of them, I don't know, whatever. It's cool. I had a good time, and you know what? Now that I like Shia LaBeouf as an actor, not 100% as a person, but as an actor more. After seeing Peanut Butter Falcon and Fury and some other good stuff at the time, seeing Shia LaBeouf as Mutt Jones, I wasn't crazy about it, but I wouldn't mind him coming back in the 5th movie.
Well, they're shooting a 5th one.
I hope they keep that in there because that wasn't terrible. They had some good camaraderie there.
Now we got to talk about Jason Bradford. I had him on, and I'll tell you, the stories he shared about driving around Jennifer Banco was hilarious.
Jennifer Banco, Laura Park Lincoln. One day we shot We shot a few scenes for the movie in Carrizozo. This town is about a 40-minute drive north of Ruidoso.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this tiny, tiny little town in the middle of the Valley of Fires, it's called,
Mm-hmm.
in New Mexico. Really beautiful area, not a lot going on. There's about 1,200 people that live in that town. And we shot on this like ghost town little street, which I found out on that day, that is the same street where the Book of Eli was shot.
Okay.
So and there's a bunch of Ruidoso, Capitan, Carrizozo locals in that movie as extras all over, where they're just milling about in this, sort of Wild West mock-up town. The main bar that they shot in, the outside of the bar was a real building in Carrizozo on the main strip, and but that building burnt down a few months after that production. The inside of the bar is a set out in Hollywood. And but all the outside stuff was there at Carrizozo. So that was pretty neat to sort of shoot on that same street. It's barely recognizable. I went back and watched it a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the days while we were out there shooting with Lar Park Lincoln, the movie Wander was getting shot at the same time on the same street, just a few buildings away from us. And we actually booked the same building as the movie Wander, starring Tommy Lee Jones and Heather Graham.
Okay.
And I've yet to see that movie, but that was pretty wild to see a different production crew that day on set. And so we had to abandon set and bring all of Lar Park Lincoln's. That set was, we shot upstairs in this building, and that was supposed to be Lar's apartment. The exterior of her apartment was shot in Los Angeles, but the interior was shot at this location in Carrizozo. And then we shot at a few creepy basements on that street. Really great areas for some potential torture chambers. Who knows? Who knows what could happen in those basements, right? Potential, I said. That was pretty neat. So we had to clear it out for those guys to come in and shoot in the exact same building as us. That legitimized it as well, knowing that Tommy Lee Jones and Heather Graham, and I think Aaron Eckhart were shooting down the street from us at the same time. That was really neat. Jennifer Banco, she was cool. Man, to see those girls come back in and step into this survivor girl mode in these movies, really neat to see them sort of like turn it on.
Oh, Jason shared so many stories about Jennifer Banco.
Man, I had no idea how popular Jason was or what he was even connected with and doing with the movie, And I remember he got a picture with me on set, and I was like, okay, I don't know why I'm okay, cool. Let's take a picture together. And, then a year later, I'm like, oh, wow, this guy's like a minor celebrity in the horror industry, of just connecting dots and connecting people and being nice and supportive and rooting for projects to get support. It was great. Jason was very cool.
I heard he gets a death scene in the movie.
He's got a great death scene, and I'm happy to say, as far as I know, his death scene there's a flash image of it in the new trailer that's going to come out. He's got
when will we see that trailer?
I don't know, man. I've seen it. It looks great. There was an accidental leak a few weeks ago that we nipped in the butt. 30 lucky souls managed to view it before we had it taken down. Jason's,
how did it leak?
Jason's death scene is, I think, my favorite death.
Okay.
In the movie, we don't even really get to see the death, but it's a great death. It's just like a great little throwaway 10 seconds of like, okay, all right, that's that. All right, now we know what we're dealing with. So that was another like big investment, small payout kind of death, like Chris Norris's death, where we show up to this tiny little guard shack in Ruidoso outside of like a ritzy neighborhood out there, and we tinted the windows to make it look like night, and had Rick Serra drive a car to give us production value, and had a rickety old oscillating fan on a desk, and Jason Bradford's wearing a security guard outfit with the name tag that reads Troy Olke.
Yeah.
So he plays Troy Olke in the movie, which is pretty funny. Um, I drive by that location almost every day when I'm in Ruidoso, and that was pretty neat to sort of like, because that guard shack doesn't really get a lot of attention most days, but then to know that we have like 12 to 20 guys at that location, and we had Jason Bradford dead in that space was incredible. Every time I drive by, that's like a little laugh for myself of like, um,
And I know
Jason.
through some footage, I know Tracy Savage gets captured in it because I
Oh
saw.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, people. It's like when I like let hints out that some characters are going to get captured, some characters are going to die, and some people might not be happy about some of those deaths. But guess what? That's part of what makes it a horror film, is getting worried about what's going to happen to this person that does get captured, and what's going to happen to this person. And it's great because everybody that stepped into those roles really just owned it very well. And all the I mean, in a game of pressure, there's a lot less pressure, I think, to die in a movie than there is to stay on clinging for life. Like, gosh, I don't want to say who lives and dies, but
I do. I live.
well, I
I
mean,
just get splattered in blood.
maybe your picture's just up there in memoriam.
Uh-oh.
For these characters, I mean, for the characters whose living room it's in, right?
Ah.
Um, but yeah, maybe it's just in memoriam. Um, that was pretty neat. What was funny was Chris Norris. He plays. I won't go into his death, but he plays a janitor in the
Yeah,
movie.
Jimmy the janitor.
He plays Jimmy the janitor. Um, and what's funny is that day that we shot, the actual janitor of the college was there watching the entire production.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that was a little weird for him because we were murdering a janitor.
Well, I'm a janitor. That's
In
what I've
this,
been doing all through the quarantine or pandemic, cleaning.
oh yeah,
I
just your
do this.
house.
No, I work at a cleaning firm.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's what I do for money. I do this for fun.
Oh nice.
Yeah. Yep.
Keeps you busy.
Well, pays my bills anyway, you know.
Who else was involved in the movie? Oh, Ryan Rocks was pretty cool. He's in two scenes. He's his own little horror angel that's coming up in the world, I guess. He's in a classroom scene with Tracy Savage, and he's in one of the horror convention scenes. And for the longest time, we had to cut him out of the convention scene for time. And oh yeah, I'm in the convention scene just in the background for half a second. Also, so is Dominic Weineke and Vanessa Yonta Wright. That one is great because we had like 50 people show up to the set before Corey got there.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't tell anybody we were rolling. And the camera guy just put the camera up on, a rig, a steady cam rig. And they just told everybody, just keep milling about, hang out. We're just testing to see how this looks. And they just actually ran the camera during that whole time. So it's people just hanging out, milling and being themselves. And so we use that for a lot of our convention footage stuff. And in one of those shots in the background, you'll see me dressed as the Sassy Gay hairdresser, but I have a cap on and I'm holding my behind the scenes camera. And I was like taking a break, and you can almost tell it's not me, but it's definitely me. Oh man, that means I'm in 3 scenes with Corey Feldman. Fuck yeah.
Were you there when we got to talk about Deborah Sullivan, of course?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was there for all that stuff.
I call her the cackle queen.
Mm.
That's Adam Marcus's wife, and of course, she's in Secret Santa, and after seeing that movie, I nicknamed her the Cackle Queen.
I got to check those out. I didn't know she was married to Adam Marcus. Man, I came into this movie so blind, this production. I had no idea what I was getting into, you know? They were like, yeah, it's a real movie. It's going to have all these people in it. And I Googled them all. I'm like, wow, that's very impressive. I wish I knew who any of these people were. My job's just the editor, man. I just came in and shot behind the scenes footage and pieced together the movie and helped with continuity issues. We had
I heard
one.
that Deborah Sullivan came in as kind of a replacement for Tom Matthews. That's what I heard.
Oh, that could be interesting. That would make
Hmm.
sense to me. I was not familiar with that recasting, if it was a recasting choice,
Well,
but that would
Tom
be
Matthews, I
interesting.
guess, was supposed to play a police detective or something. That's what she's playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. That checks out.
yeah.
That was so wild shooting at the Ruidoso police station. What's weird is we shot there both of our day ones. We shot there
Mhm.
day one with Corey, and then we shot there day one again with D. That was pretty wild. Thankfully, those are the only two times I've spent any amount of time in the Ruidoso police station. Um,
And I've had Jill Paul Rising on here as well. So, yeah, you're 17th, my 17th different person from that film I've had on here.
that's wild. Yeah, Joel plays a disgruntled police officer. It was supposed to be it was supposed to be the camera assistant at the time, and he was too focused on the camera and kept spiking the lens and couldn't remember his lines. It was kind of like that thing of like where like those behind the camera always think that acting is an easy job, and then when they get in front of the camera they have like a meltdown and freeze and can't remember their lines, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, that's a lot harder than it looks. um, and so then Joel stepped in and traded shirts, and he hadn't even shaved that day, so he's like, it definitely looks like a disgruntled, police captain who's just there and has better shit to do that day.
Hmm.
uh, that was pretty neat because that set that we shot on a front porch, there's a kind of a memorial on the front porch
Hmm.
of somebody who's been captured. And Kelsey was there. Oh, fuck, I was there in that scene. Vanessa was there. Dominic Weineke's there. I think Jason Bradford's in that scene. Rick, Sarah, a couple other extras. And we shot there at that house. It's supposed to be Lar Park, Lincoln, or somebody's house. Oh, you may have to cut that out. Um, and the house that we
Well,
shot
I
at.
know Lar Park Lincoln gets captured. You see it in the teaser trailer, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
I had to. Well, I mean, she's just great at that. And the house that we shot at was actually the co-creator for Gumby, who happens to live in Carrizozo. And so we shot at his house, and we were able to use his bathroom and got to hang out in Gumby's co-creator's art studio and
so
see,
you don't
like,
get we don't get scenes between Gumby and Lar Park Lincoln.
there was some scheduling conflicts. Gumby was working with Pokey to get the blockheads back in order, just couldn't work it out. Couldn't work it out, at least not for this round. I'm
Well,
hoping
Lara's always at these conventions hunting for a quote unquote man. And she always does these videos, very funny videos where she's going around these weird creature characters, and realizing, this is not going to work. This is like she did one with Slimer from Ghostbusters. And I'm like,
nice.
Lara with Gumby. Now that might be a fit for her.
I'm sure you can reach all the hard to reach places. Or am I thinking of Mr. Fantastic? Um, uh, what was it? That was cool. Oh, wait, back up. Lar. Oh yeah, is she like Diogenes, who goes out in the middle of the day with a lantern trying to find an honest man?
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, she's a good performer. Like I said, she's a great improviser. Um, yeah, that was a neat little movie. Um,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing 13 Fanboy. And if it's not August 13th, I'd like to get it at our
it,
theater here.
it definitely won't be August 13th,
That's
because it
fine.
only just got picked up a few months ago by distributors.
Hmm.
And they're don't do a lot of horror films, but they want to start doing horror films. And this is supposed to be their tentpole horror film, their first one that they're putting out, which is very exciting, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and the cool thing about that is, or the interesting thing about that is, usually when a movie gets picked up by a distributor, they are in charge of hiring someone to cut the trailer for it. And in this case, they have one guy who cuts all their trailers. And he does not have a lot of experience cutting horror film trailers. And so Deb and I basically just piecemealed what worked in the original teaser that we put out, and then what worked in a trailer that we cut last October, and then blended the elements of what worked from all of those two trailers in to make this, final monster third trailer, which shows a lot, gives very minimal information, lets you see everyone that's in the movie right off of the bat. Um, which is a bummer. Like in that first teaser, we had Adrian King and I think Tom Matthews listed in the credits, and we didn't even know yet that they were pulling out at the time. And so that had to be changed. Um, but so this trailer is a lot more fun. I'm looking forward to have it come out. I'm looking forward to have the movie come out. Look at this. That's my 13 Fanboy tattoo. That's my first ever 13 tattoo. And I've got the killer's mask inside the thing. I think DJ Patton has one. Like, he showed up the day after I got this done, and he had one almost exactly the same on the webbing of his palm. And then I got that with Elise Garcia, the hairdresser in the movie, Reese Mercado, our makeup artist, Jason West, the key grip on the movie, Phil Bumhart, another grip guy, was there, but he didn't get a tattoo. He was like, "Are you sure you want to get a tattoo? It's going to be with you for the rest of your life on your body." And I was like, "Bro, my name's going to be in the opening credits on this movie for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
I'm already in it. Let's just document time and get this $40 tattoo." Like, I'm on
Oh
board.
yeah.
This is a rad experience. And
Well,
then
we have Cineplex here, and
that's where you get your tattoos.
no, that's where we get the movies come.
Hmm.
And I'm hoping that 13 Fanboy could come to Cineplex here in Canada.
That would be cool. I don't know. It's weird, man. It's like, you and I went back and forth on scheduling, trying to get this interview out of the
Hmm.
way. And my big thing was, I didn't want to do an interview until one of two things happened, and hopefully both. And I think we have it now, is finding a distributor and getting some kind of release date
Hmm.
confirmed. And I can tell you that it's definitely not coming out August, Friday the 13th. It's more likely going to come out in October.
That's well,
That's
you know what? It's perfect for Halloween.
Yeah,
I
it's going to be
wouldn't
great.
I wouldn't release it the same date though as Halloween Kills though.
That's not up to me. That's above everybody's pay grade, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing was, I wanted to make sure everything was done on the movie as well. And so now that it's all wrapped and done, and I've wrapped up the credits, I need to make sure the college is thanked on there, of course, and their lovely carpet that we ruined. Um, and
Oh, I heard too. I speaking of which,
Carpet.
and I almost forgot about this. I heard that Tom McLaughlin and Ari Lehman both have music in this
Yes,
film.
yes, yeah. They have phenomenal tracks that I was able to. Deb gave me a bunch of music to play with to see if I can find spots for him in the movie of these different artists, and I
I
found
actually sent some.
really great spots for
There's
them.
there's a band out of Toronto that I've interviewed a couple time on here called Blood Opera. They wrote a
Oh,
song called Fanboy
oh, nice.
for this movie, and I met them. I've known them every year. I went to Horrorama, and I remember they approached me at the 2019 one, and they said, "Hey, you're involved with 13 Fanboy. Could you help us get our song Fanboy to
I
Debbie
had
Voorhees?
I had no idea. I'll have to go and look it up at some point. Well, who is it called?
Blood Opera.
I was gonna say Blood Circus.
Blood Opera. They got a song called Fanboy. I've heard it and it's great. Even Sean Clark liked it. And they I actually called Debbie Sue, but didn't get an answer, so I left a message for her.
Hang on, I'm looking it up
Respond.
right now.
Yeah, she responded to me on Facebook, and she said how to get the music to her, because that would be a great song for 13 Fanboy.
Well, I can tell you it's not in the credits now or in the sound mix, so it's probably not going to be in the movie. Maybe it'll make it in. Maybe it'll make it in the soundtrack or an additional soundtrack CD or something when all that comes out. That could be cool, but like a bonus track. Maybe if we do a director's cut, we can put it in the credits or find another spot for it in the director's cut. You know,
Because I heard them perform this song live.
That's cool.
They do it in costume. They wear like Return of the Living Dead quite costumes, you know.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We did. That was, yeah. Tom McLaughlin's got a great song, and the other guys have great songs. We put them all in really awesome spots. I love using original music like that. That was really cool, and the fact that they're, just the whole franchise is indebted to them anyways. So to bring them into the movie made so much sense, right? Mm-hmm. I can't remember if we looked at this song or not, but I can tell you it's not in the movie. But that is super cool. Maybe in a sequel. We got to see how this movie response is first. But yeah, they have movie credits. They have song credits in the movie. I like our music in this film. Tamer was great to work with in terms of score. Mm-hmm. I remember I went to go have dinner with them, but I couldn't bring my dog in with me because she was in heat at the time. There's only so many diapers in the world, and they only work so well for a pity pup, yeah, it's pretty neat. I'm trying to think of any other crazy little story events that happened in the movie. One night we shot, has anyone talked to you about the epic fight scene that we shot one night?
Indulge me.
That was crazy. I won't tell you who's in it. Well, Dee was there. Haley's in it. I won't tell you anybody else.
Okay.
But I'll tell you that those two are in it, obviously. It's a big climactic fight scene, right? Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you those two girls were in it. There's other people in the scene, obviously, but I won't. That's the end of the movie. You'll have to wait for it. But we shot that on the property of Susan Travis, who's a local artist in Ruidoso. She's great. She's helped me out with so much. We shot at her house for 2 weeks. That was Dee Wallace's house in the movie. It's actually this lady named Susan Travis. And we did a shoot on January the 19th. That was a personal goal of mine and Deb's, was to see if we could get the movie done and out the door within a year of that day that we shot. And that day I remember because we took the day off beforehand so that everybody could switch their schedules. And we shot from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. Out at night on this property with a bunch of lights. And it was fucking freezing out there. I remember I went home twice to put on more long johns, more socks, more gloves, and more hats because I was running a third camera on that fight scene and shooting behind the scenes stuff. And some of my stuff got in the fight scene from that as well. And Dominic Weinecke shot second camera on that night, and Ben Meredith shot first camera that night. And that was, God, it was freezing. We had a full on fire roasting inside the house, and we would take a break every 2 to 3 hours so everybody could go inside and warm up. And that was crazy. Oh man, I gotta make sure that guy. Blood guy screwed it on fight. So there was this epic squib guy that they hired and brought in to do squibs for this fight scene, right?
Uh-huh.
And he was flying from another production to come here. In the airport, the TSA, I shit you not, they confiscated his squib tools. He had a pneumatic press for shooting blood out of a squib instead of explosives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was, so he had like a hose and a press, and that's how he does it. But they captured that on the plane. So he ended up having to sit behind the subject and sort of hide behind a tree and behind the subject and crouch low to the ground and load this tube with, fake blood, and then pressure force it out with his own breath to get the blood to come out and spurt out like a gunshot would. And it looks incredible in the movie, but he did that totally improvised with just the breath in his lungs. And that was a pretty crazy little night. Man, that was cold. Like, I remember going home as the sun was coming up, and I was just exhausted. That fight scene was, because it wasn't just one fight scene, it's like 2 or 3 fight scenes all at once. And that was a wild cutting experience. And then blending the 3 types of footage together too to make it all work. And credit to Deb, because she's the colorist on the whole movie. She did all the coloring work on the whole film.
I gotta bring that up because Debbie Sue is actually in the movie too. Now I am going to assume that her scene is either a flashback or happens at the beginning of the movie.
What if it's both, man?
Could be.
Maybe it could be.
Mystery.
Could be, yeah. It's a total mystery.
I know. I see that photo online of her and what would be young Haley jumping over that stream there, and
running. It's a good photo.
Yeah,
that picture's in the movie too. Yeah, that was a fun little process. I was not on set for that stuff. I had already started editing at that time. So I went home. I stayed on set and worked from set editing for the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then the last 2 weeks they were just all over in a billion different locations, and it would take me too much to reset every day. So I just went home and started cutting from there. She's in the movie, plays herself. That was interesting. That was tough for her to sort of step back into that role, not only as acting as this caricature of herself, but also directing herself in this mode as well.
Did she stay off the Hubbard yard?
Off the what? Who's that?
Did she stay off the Hubbard yard?
Oh yeah, definitely. She was on somebody else's yard, if you know what I mean.
Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to get for the perks, All I know is that
donuts.
I just remember that when she announced Tracy Savage was in it, I was in. And
Tracy's very cool. I'm supposed to do something with her too. She's awesome.
Yeah, and I don't know what perks I'm supposed to get, but I'm excited about this movie.
That's great to hear.
And it's interesting too, because we mentioned all the people from the films, from the Friday films in it, but it was so great getting to know Jason Bradford, Christopher Norris, Troy Elke, and Noelle and Christy and
Haley, of course.
Haley, yep.
Andrew, Vince.
I haven't had Andrew LaHaye on here yet. I got to get him on, but I have had Vincent DeSante on twice.
He's a fun dude. I think I remember one day on set, I snuck a bunch of notes in his clothes to creep him out. Like I put notes in me and some friends on set, we wrote different notes with like different handwritings, and we hid like one in his wallet, one in his...
Who's returning?
He's returning. The return of the gatto.
The return of the Gee.
Il gatto ritorno. we had I put a note in his pants pockets, a note in the bottom of his shoes, a note in his wallet. We put a bunch of creepy notes all over his because like one day he went in to go do a set and just left all of his clothes in the bathroom at the house.
Uh-huh.
And so we just put like creepy stuff. I can't even remember what it was, but it was definitely nice and creepy. He was a fun dude to fuck with on set. So was Kane. Kane spit on Jason West's hand at one point, and he did a plenty of sack taps to different guys on set too.
I heard about that.
Yeah, like Jason would be like, he like in one car scene, he like claps the board, and right as he claps the board, Kane spit on the back of Jason's hand, and so the take is Jason like clapping the board, 27A, scene 3, take 1, clap, and then he's like, oh, gross, and then like wipes it on Kane's jacket, and then yeah, there were a couple times on set where like right as he's doing the clapboard, he just like reaches up with his toe and just bunk taps Jason right in the nads, and then he's got to like keep it together during the whole scene. And then Kane's fighting somebody and it's locked it up. It was great. Yeah, that was a good time. I have one behind the scenes footage. I hope I can get some money put together so I can edit together a behind the scenes featurette of this movie, because seeing all these guys like hang out, that was where the real fun was. Like seeing Vince and Kane and Jennifer and Jason Bradford and Dominic Weineke and then Tracy Savage, Judy, CJ, seeing all of them being together on set and hanging out and having fun with each other was such a unique experience. Like I remember there being a really, really epic fight scene in this house, and they were shooting upstairs, had to turn the air conditioning off. So it was a sauna up there with the whole cast and crew. And then the rest of the cast and crew stayed downstairs of the house, and we had to keep it down while they were screaming and shouting and throwing each other up against walls upstairs. I won't say who, but it was very intense. It sounds like somebody is definitely getting raped or murdered upstairs, and we're all just like downstairs eating pasta and reading magazines like it's a normal Tuesday. And so I have this like footage of people like screaming and being yanked out of doorways and hallways upstairs, and then there's people like taking naps on the couch downstairs. Such a weird process. Such a weird process. Oh, one of the cool things, this is unrelated, but there's the police officer in the movie. His name is, well, there are two of them. There's Nigel and Will.
Mm-hmm.
Nigel West and Will Dixon played two different police officers. And I think Nigel or Will, I think it was Will, but Will had previously taken an acting, a few acting classes from Dee Wallace in Los Angeles at her acting academy at the time. And it was like 2 or 3 years later that they were then working on set together and had scenes together, like very intense dramatic scenes where, Dee is beside herself in energy, and these guys have to like help contain her for the character scene or whatever it is. And that was pretty neat to see them work together again after having worked together so long in an acting academy together. That was pretty neat. There were a lot of cool connections made in the movie. Yeah, that was a fun time, man. That house was brutal. There were like 7 houses that we went to that all had just epic driveways, and everyone had to walk up and hike up these driveways constantly. A lot of this movie was planned and organized in a very clean, productive way. Some parts of it were very guerrilla style, which I respect the hell out of. You got a tight schedule. We only have 2 days with this person. We got to go, baby. Pretty impressive. Yeah, Joel was the producer and had to fend off a few police officers one day. Thankfully, he wasn't dressed like a police officer when he had to fend off the real police officers. That would have been entertaining. I'm trying to think if there's anything else cool. Deb was awesome. She was great to work on, to edit with. That was probably, I'll leave you with this, that was probably like the weirdest experience editing. Like, what can I say without giving anything away? Deb is in a scene. It's very intense. She's screaming
Mhm.
for her life. And I'm editing the scene. I've been on it all day and the night before. And I'm just really in and focused on making sure this scene feels real and that the audience feels like we are at risk here of losing somebody great, right? And I want that sensation to happen. And as I'm editing various screams coming from Deborah Voorhees, suddenly my phone rings on the desk, and who's calling me is Deborah Voorhees. And that was like a very strange, like I had to pause the movie and take a break. And she was like, "Are you okay, honey?" I was like, "I'm fine. I'm just, I'm editing your scene and I need to, I'm having a hard time separating the two things, like what's on screen and talking to you on the phone where everything's totally fine." That was a unique little, uh, that was a very, very unique experience of, um, yeah, that was bizarre. That was a bizarre thing. Um, that was cool. It was neat having her husband there because he got to watch all the different cuts of it. And that guy watches a lot of horror films too.
Is he
And he
in the
got to get his,
film?
yes, he is actually. He's in a scene with everybody. Yeah, he's in a scene with, he's standing by a fireplace flirting with a girl that I met on Tinder and brought into the movie as an extra for two scenes. She's in a convention scene and she's in a scene we did the next day at Dee Wallace's house. And so he's in the scene with, he's flirting with this girl in front of his wife, right? He's directing the scene, which is great. But she's in that scene with a lot of people. Chris, Abby, or not Abby, Alexis Capozzi, who plays Abby Wallace, and the kids were there, and gosh, one of the little girls I ended up working with and her family for the last 6 months that I was in Ruidoso, little Haley, she plays Dee Wallace's granddaughter, youngest granddaughter, and she's like, there's something magic about seeing Dee Wallace play a mother and a grandmother at the same time. Like she is always the mother in the movies, right? And to see her step up and become the grandmother now too, the matriarch of the film, really, really neat. She is so good with kids and getting kids to like find the thing when you're in a scene, like you're both looking for the thing and finding it together. She was incredibly patient with these kids. And little Haley quickly became a best friend to both me and my dog. Um, her mother runs a cabin company in Ruidoso, and I left my dog behind at the cabin central location plenty of times. And this little girl from the movie babysat my dog for like 3 months. Had a great time with that. And we did one pickup line from her because she improvised an absolutely flawless line in the film. And it made Deb and I laugh so freaking much. But there was like a door that creaked over the line. And so we missed half of it. And so I went over and that's the only line of ADR that I got. We got some other ADR in the movie, of course, that's inevitable. But I got this line from this little girl in the movie, and I'm really happy about that addition. We had one scene that we almost kept in. There's like at one point, there's a character that pulls a gun on a loved one, and it's just these two loved ones staring back and forth at each other. And it's a very intense scene. And early established in the scene was that there was a little dog in the scene as well. And there's other people involved in the scene in different areas of the house, right? And that was very tricky, was like blending everybody in the house in different parts of the house to make sure everybody's still being told in the same story. Like we don't want to leave anybody behind in the edit. And I realized a couple of days prior that, we haven't included this dog in this scene. We should make sure the dog is included. And so in this scene where I have these two people and the gun's drawn and they're staring at each other, I cut over to this little dog staring at the two people, like pointing a gun at each other. And I thought it would like add to the drama of the moment, but instead it just totally like destroyed it. And so we had to take it out because it was too funny. I mean, I loved it, but very inappropriate. You ever seen that meme where it's the good and bad, the ugly, and it's the three of them staring at each other?
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes on to other people, like an angry cat staring, and then there's like a monkey staring, and then it's that little girl with the popsicle staring, and then it's like Sam Rockwell staring, and then you have uh like the guy from The Happening staring. It looked like that. Like I wanted to include this dog also in that meme of we had to yeah, we had to nix that one right in the bud because it just was not, it was a mood killer. It wasn't the mood we wanted. But that was pretty cool. That was tricky because there were like three Haleys involved in the movie. There was a character Haley, a little actress named Haley, her sister that in the movie, her sister is played by a girl named Kaylee with a K.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there was a fourth Haley at some point. It was very confusing.
What was it like the last day on set?
The last day on set?
Mm-hmm.
The last day on set, we would have been in Bruadoso. Golly. You know what I'm going to do to answer that question?
Mm.
I'm going to pull up the footage. I know all these people, what's funny is like, I'm not a Friday the 13th, like overt fan. Like I didn't grow up watching the franchise. I grew up watching Michael Myers, Halloween.
I love the original Halloween.
I love it. And I grew up watching Tremors and all the movies that made fun of that stuff, like Blade and all the other different types of horror films, The Thing, then of course the Giallo stuff, Ghostbusters, which, you can argue is a comedy, but I think it's still a really quality horror film. Where's my footage? Oh, there it is. Yeah, so you couldn't have given all this footage to a better person, because if I was like a Friday the 13th fan, I would be shitting myself trying to keep all this footage under wraps, right?
Mm.
But since I'm, just the editor, I'm like, oh yeah, let me go grab that clip real quick. All right, so let's see. The last day we shot, okay, those are drones in LA. January 31st. What are you? Okay, that's LA. So I wasn't there for the LA stuff. I did not help with any of that, because I honestly can't remember what the last day of footage was, or what the last day of. Oh, okay. Narrowing it down. Those are pickup shoots. That doesn't count.
Well, you got computers all around you, I take it.
Yeah, as an editor, I'm constantly running at least 2 or 3 monitors at a time. Deb and I had 3 monitors running with the clean video feed, and then a secondary monitor to access all the files and everything, and then the main monitor for working with DaVinci Resolve. Yeah, I've been in the edit game since I was 12. I used to cut VHS to VHS, and even then you need multiple screens. Let's see, the last day, what's this one? Oh, the last day, that was pretty, if I'm correct, I can't tell you what happened, but there is blood involved, and more blood got on the carpet.
Well, you guys destroyed this person's place.
Yeah, well, the first one was the college, and that's fine. Nobody cares. This one was somebody's house, and that's a little icky, or a little tough to manage, right? Because it was like right in the living room. We were short on time, short on schedule. End of the thing, wrapping up. You know how it goes. It's funny. We did a lot of pickup shoots. On like the last 2 weeks of footage was just like pickup shoot city. Like, get this driving stuff, get this drone stuff, get this exterior stuff. We focus so heavily on shooting everything with everyone. Like Dee's last day was very emotional. She was incredible. It was tough for her because she had some family stuff going on in the background, some health issues. And so she kept it together, but that you could tell that was in the back of her mind. And when we shot the big fight scene out in the woods at night, Deb got a phone call and had some emergency family stuff going on too. And so she kind of had to put that in the background. I got sick for a couple days on the shoot once, so I had to go home and go out. It's just kind of what happens when you shoot on a tight schedule like that, where it's up to 12 hours every day for a month. You get people that drop like flies every now and then, you know. Uh-oh, let me turn the sound off. Just in case of spoilers.
You got a website or anything like that you want to plug on here, or any charities?
You know, I'm still putting together a website right now, so I'm just happy that this movie's getting out. This is my first official feature to cut on my own. I've usually just been the assistant editor or coming in after the movie's already been cut. And I'm, you know, helping tie everything together. But to come in basically at the start, be a part of the shooting process, get to edit it in part on set was just, I'm blown away. And I'm so happy to see this movie get out. I've got a couple docs lined up that I'm going to try to work on next. Mostly, you know, that's pretty much it. I'm happy to see this movie get out. My own private professional production company name is Black Tie Films. I've got a Vimeo page. People can check that out, and I have Black Tie Films on YouTube. A lot of little random stuff here and there. I do music videos and behind the scenes things, a little bit of graphics work. You know, this movie caught me at a real big life juncture. Like I dropped out of LA and I didn't want anything to do with that. And then this movie literally dropped in my lap, pleasant people to work with. And this horror family that adopted me very quickly without any question. And I'm incredibly blessed by that, you know, by Deb and Jason Bradford and everyone else on set. And getting to meet Dee and Corey Feldman, of course. And then getting to know CJ and Kane and Jennifer and Laura, really incredible. So this movie gave me like the opportunity to get excited about making movies again, because I got really burnt out by working on them in LA for so long.
I bet, yeah.
Especially when I'm just a BPM, a button pushing monkey in the edit. It doesn't get to make a lot of creative choices and decisions. But with this, you know, Deb really welcomed my input on this in the language of horror, like the broad language of horror, not just the Friday the 13th language of horror. And so I'm really looking forward to, I'm about to step away and go to Italy for a couple months and visit a friend and see if I can wrestle up any projects out there, work on any documentaries. I've got a documentary I want to make about a possessive church cult that I used to be involved in about a decade or so ago. And I don't know where that's going to go anytime soon, but I was roped in.
For real, you were involved with this?
Yeah, I was in my 20s. I was roped into a punk rock, Jesus, heavy metal church cult. And and what's crazy is at the time I just brought a video camera with me and filmed everything because I was in the film club at school. And so I just filmed everything. And the day that I quit the church, someone else came in and started filming that church. And so he and I talked a few years ago, and he has footage for 6 years after I left, and I have footage for 6 years before he started. And so that's kind of my next project is, can I blend those two things together and help tell a story about what happened in this little 10-year period of how this church affected just a hella ton of people. And that's
obviously it wasn't an actual church inspired by Jesus himself.
I'd argue that it definitely was.
Well,
but that's people for you, man.
Jesus was not a cult. Jesus was my savior.
What's the Gandhi expression? I like your Jesus, but I don't like your Christians. Your Christians are so unlike your Christ.
Oh yeah, I get that.
That's kind of that's the best way to put this.
But I don't go to church.
That's I have this on my back right now. This is my first tattoo. So I always remind people he's got their backs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then people ask me if I want to get it covered up because I'm no longer religious. I'm religious about studying religion. I'm fascinated by it. But I just tell them like, no, it's behind me because it's on my back. It's a tattoo of Jesus behind me. It's
Mm-hmm.
great. I can cut in lines of water parks whenever I want. Uh, instant forgiveness. But
Yes, that's what he does. Yep.
those are my sort of projects going forward. So I'm kind of in between stuff. I'm going to go to Italy and put together a website with a reel of all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a website, blacktiefilms.com. There's almost nothing there right now. So nothing really, but as far as any charity goes, I'll just be selfish and say, feed me while I'm in Italy, charity.
Did you
Just kidding.
hear about the one that I threw out?
Keep
Called
donating to Indiegogo and support amazing movies like this getting made. It's incredible. We're sidestepping the entire production gamut of Hollywood, and I freaking love it. And that's what I was going to say earlier about the distribution. It's really tough trying to get a movie out like this in a post-COVID market.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this Indiegogo approach is something that is changing the game, and I'm blown away by it. So just keep donating and supporting and helping independent film. And that's what I would recommend and point and direct people towards is help on projects like this.
Did
Because
you hear
that
about
kept me employed for a year, and I am
yeah.
incredibly appreciative of that. So especially during COVID.
Well, I was happy to be part of that.
Yeah,
Did you
man.
hear about the Doubtfire face challenge that I threw out to people on there?
The Doubtfire face challenge, like Mrs. Doubtfire and the cake, the hello
Yeah.
thing. Uh-uh.
After the ice bucket challenge was successful for ALS, one
Mhm.
came out after Robin Williams sadly left us called the Doubtfire Face Challenge for Suicide and Depression Awareness. And it involved taking a pie in the face and you nominate 3 people.
Nice.
And I threw it out to people I had interviewed. I did one with Lisa Langlois in Toronto. Nancy McLaughlin did one right in front of props from Jason Lives.
Nice. I did
And
the I did the
Sandy
ice.
Johnson did one. Sandy Johnson was Judith Myers in Halloween.
Uh-huh.
Her husband was dressed up as Michael Myers, and he put the pie in her face, and she nominated PJ Souls, Nick Castle, and Felissa Rose.
Nice. I did the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge right when I moved to Los Angeles, and I nominated a few people, and nothing ever happened from it, but I still donated $100. And then I did some research on where all those donations went to, and I was pretty unhappy by that. So now I'm a little wary about what I donate to.
You know what? I don't tell people to donate. I don't tell people to donate because I don't know. I know with a lot of them you got to do research on, but I just tell people to do the challenge to bring awareness.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I I would say if any charities, I support food banks the most.
Mm-hmm.
Food banks, because that does you don't even have to donate money, right? You can just donate food or time to volunteer. I did a documentary on a food bank in Texas once. It was my
Mm-hmm.
first doc I ever cut. And that gained incredible notoriety for that food bank. That was the Tarrant Area Food Bank, TAFB. And once I've seen what kind of work goes in there and the kind of souls that volunteer their time for that work, that's what I'm impressed the most by that. It's kind of like, don't donate money to homeless people, give them food.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the Doubtfire Challenge, I know Jason Bradford and Troy Elke both did it.
I think I remember seeing that.
And they threw it out to people. Of course, when I did it in Toronto, at least I nominated Tracy Savage and
Oh
I
yeah.
forget who else. And
I think I saw some of these in the sheer horror group, the Deb Voorhees
yeah.
sheer horror group. What's funny about that
Yeah.
is in order to close a couple loops, when you're in an edit, there's always going to be something that you didn't think of or think of when you're on set.
Mm-hmm.
And in the edit, there's all these missing gaps and holes of like, oh, kind of like Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park.
Uh-huh.
Like we need to fill this gap with something, this gap of information. It's going to take 7 seconds, but it's going to be just enough of the appropriate information that crosses us into the next scene, right? And so we had to do a couple of those with different actors. And it worked out really well. And one of the ones we did was for Laura Park Lincoln. Well, we've established that she gets captured at some point in the movie. And we did a Facebook kind of mock-up post of something that she put up online that is mentioned in the script, but it's not really, we don't really see it. And it's kind of under the radar. Like, we showed early cuts of the movie to people and they had confusing issues of like, hey, this is unclear, this doesn't make sense, and I must have missed this because that didn't make sense. And I'm really grateful to people like that, right, to help us find the missing gaps of like, okay, that's unclear. Like Poppy Gillett plays a young Kelsey Voorhees in a flashback, right? And it's funny, my dad watched the movie and didn't realize until the end of the movie when a flashback comes back that little girl was young Kelsey Voorhees. Whereas Deb and I thought it was 100% clear, but it definitely wasn't for two people. My dad and brother didn't get it and someone else didn't get it. So we thought it was clear, but that's our job as editing, to make it as clear as possible and make it as obvious. So we had to actually go in and record some ADR of Deb saying the name Kelsey a few extra times to this young actress and sneak it in. That way it's very clear this is young Kelsey, right? There's a lot of stuff like that. So we actually did that for a Lar Park Lincoln moment where I made a mock-up of the Deb Voorhees sheer horror group. And so now there's a sheer horror group fan page inside the movie, but spelled differently. That was pretty cool to make. Oh, right. And Tiffany Helms. I keep forgetting about Tiffany Helms in the movie too.
Is her picture in there or is she actually in it?
She's got a tiny little cameo, but it's mostly just pictures and images and stuff. So
yeah, I think she mentioned something to me about that.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product of this film.
Me too, man. Me too.
I'm excited about it.
I'm looking forward to see it get out. Do you have any idea how many people I show my tattoo to, and then they ask about the movie that I've been on, and they're like, wow, that sounds really cool. I haven't seen it yet. You know, they're trying to impress me, like they're going to look for it. I'm like, yeah, nobody's seen it yet. I've seen it like 72 billion times, but that's it. Nobody else has seen it. I'm really looking forward to it being released very soon. I hope I can make it to a premiere either in Ruidoso or Los Angeles.
I won't make it to a premiere. I do know that, but
well, we do have the internet and Zoom, which we've discovered is incredibly handy thanks to COVID.
Yeah.
So we can still.
Well, I do want to see it theater. I'm hoping maybe.
Me too.
That I could see it maybe in Toronto at one of the conventions I go to, if possible. I don't know.
That would be cool. Yeah, maybe you can write a Bridgestone Media Group and ask them about bringing it to Toronto.
Well, what I would do is I would just approach Chris Alexander of Horrorama.
Oh, does he do a lot of booking and stuff like that in Canada?
Yeah, he used to work for Fangoria magazine.
Oh my God. I walked through a spider web last night and it's still on my glasses.
You sure it wasn't Troy Elke's beard?
Maybe both. Could have been both. Could have been both. Easily the weirdest part about having a beard is when you catch a spider in it.
Everything about Troy Elke is weird. That's why we like him.
Yeah, I've not even met that guy. We're just friends on Facebook by connection.
I have never met him, but I've interviewed him on here twice, you know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you can get me for the next horror interview or whatever project I'm working on next. So
that's my next thing.
I'll have to look for the next project that I can get in the next few months. Yeah.
Well, it was great to have you come on here today and talk about 13 Fanboy and all the stories and about Kane getting punched in the balls and all this stuff. And
no, Kane didn't punch anybody in the balls. Nobody had the balls to punch Kane in the balls. He punched
I heard
everybody
Jason
else
Bradford
in the balls.
did it.
Oh, well, that's Jason Bradford.
You know.
Oh man. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks for letting me talk your ear off. I'm real good at that.
Well, I'm glad we were able to make it happen. I'm looking forward to the movie. I'm honored to be part of this movie.
Oh yeah, man, it's gonna be
My
rad.
name on it and my picture in it. And then my picture can't look any better than being in a scene with Tracy Savage. And
Yeah,
really, really, you got to credit Tracy Savage that I'm involved in this at all.
hell yeah. Then it's a perfect scene to be in. I'll tell you this much: your head is a lot shinier than normal.
Oh, is it?
Well, in the picture, in the movie.
Does Tracy Savage kiss my picture?
No,
Oh.
she kisses. I don't think she kisses anybody in this movie. Oh man, that was funny. Yeah, no,
I've had her on here twice. She said I make her feel good with all the nice things I say to her.
actually, I take it back. She has one kiss in the movie. I don't know if it's going to be in the final cut, but technically two. But I can't get into it. I can't get into it. You can't pressure me.
Please say it's my picture.
Um, are you okay with me lying to you?
Oh, darn it, man. I shared my cat on here twice.
That's okay. It's radio. It's radio. Be careful who you go around showing your cat off to, man.
Kitty came over. Kitty had to take what was coming to him.
Well, my dogs are barking. I got to take them outside. Anyways, yeah, it's been a pleasure. We'll have to catch up again sometime.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful having you on here, and you have yourself a wonderful day, and keep us excited for 13 Fanboy.
Oh man, I could not be more excited. Have you seen all the different little stories I've shared on Facebook of on the edit day with Deb? Just different days editing. Those were wild.
I've seen a few of them, yeah.
Yeah, good times. Good
Good
times.
times. Well, I
Um,
hope they get an uncut version of this film too, because
oh, that would be rad.
I'll
I'd
sit
love.
through 2 hours and a half of this.
I know nobody will have a problem with that, but I would love to. If we can get the funds for that, that would be great.
Well,
I guess it just depends on how well it's received. Maybe we can get it for the DVD
or the Blu-ray.
or
I'm
the
a Blu-ray
Blu-ray.
person.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I hope I can put together a behind the scenes featurette for the Blu-ray. That would be cool
There you go.
with all the spoilers.
There you
Um,
go.
awesome. Well, are you going to be cutting and trimming this down at all?
No,
Alrighty. Well,
and you're not even my longest interview.
oh man, I was just gonna say, make sure I don't do any spoilers at the beginning.
Oh, I don't think there's any spoilers in here at all.
Well, we got to kill somebody in this movie, or else it's not a movie, you know.
Yeah, but I'll say this. No,
Somebody's going down.
Craig Muckler of Microwave Massacre went 4 hours and 8 minutes on here. I doubt you top that.
Oh man. Well, good to hear. Good to hear. Challenge
All right.
accepted for the next time.
Absolutely. I look forward to having you back.
All right. Thanks for your Canada time, my
All
friend.
right. You
Leave
take
your
care.
leave your door unlocked and stay kind, right?
Absolutely. Take it
All
easy,
right.
man.
Have a good one. Ciao.
Yep. Yep. Bye.